Good morning, everyone. Go ahead and call our meeting to order, the Brawley City Council and successor agency to the Brawley Community Redevelopment Agency special meeting agenda. Today's Tuesday, June 2nd, 9 a.m., and we're meeting in our City Council chambers located at 383 Main Street in Brawley. And we'll go ahead and ask for a roll call.
The meeting will reflect all council members present.
And I think it's appropriate to have an invocation today. Mayor Pro Tem Hamby, would you honor us with an invocation?
Absolutely.
Please stand.
Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, we are very grateful to you today for your hand of protection that's been upon our community. Lord, I ask that you would continue to protect us, our safety personnel, our city employees. Lord, we thank you for the peace and calm that is over our town and over our valley today. We know that there are a lot of people that are hurting, that are sick, that are heartbroken, and we ask that you would bring healing and peace to our land. We ask that you'd bring wisdom to our government, to our leaders, and bring wisdom to us today as we discuss our city budget. We know that there are things that are important in the eternal scope, and there are things that are not important, but today this is important to our city, and we ask that you would guide us in the discussions that we have. We thank you for the blessings that we have. We thank you for the community that we have here, and I ask a special blessing upon each one of our community members in Brawley today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Councilman Morton, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
If we can turn and face the flag, hand over your heart, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you both. I think we all needed that this morning.
Yes.
Okay. Before we move on to the approval of the agenda, I have a request to pull the consent agenda items into the regular agenda for discussion and action. Do I have,
Madam Mayor?
yes.
Why, I had to ask the question, it looked like from the request that it was for all the agenda items, but it looks like 3C is the one that they're primarily interested in pulling. I was reading through it, I don't know why they would want the other ones pulled.
I agree with you. That appears to be the one that the request is addressing. So what, we can just pull all of them and then take action, or do we can, what is your, any comments on that?
I think and I agree with Councilmember Couchman. I know we're trying to go with the intent, so I believe it would be item C. Would it be appropriate just to pull that item separate, and whether there's discussion and vote on it? And
just make a motion.
Yeah.
To approve the consent, moving item C to regular business.
Yeah.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. We'll go ahead and move item 3C into our regular business agenda item, and we'll put it on as the first item on there. Okay, let's see. So we'll go ahead and I guess we already got, do I have an approval for the revised agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the revised agenda.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure I had it covered. Okay, we'll move on to public appearances and comments, not to exceed 4 minutes. This is a time for the public to address the council on any item not appearing on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city council. And I don't believe we have anything. We don't have any public, and we didn't receive any additional requests at this time. So we'll go ahead and move on to regular business, and we'll go ahead and address the item that was pulled from the consent agenda. Approve resolution number 2020, resolution of the City of Brawley, California, to update the conflict of interest code for the City of Brawley. The backup is on pages 34 to 39. And have you had the opportunity to review that? Bill, you would like to address it? Thank you.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have, it's required every 2 years to review your conflict of interest code. I think the confusion from the Teamsters, the ones that made the request to pull it, is that the elected officials and city manager, city attorney aren't included in the conflict of interest code. And the reason that we're not is because we're required to file that Form 700 under the government code. So the conflict of interest code is where a city says, in addition to the people that have to by state law, we want all these other people to do it too. So that might be the confusion.
Okay.
Very,
Thank
very
you.
good, Madam
Thank you,
Mayor.
Bill.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it's been vetted. It looks like Councilmember Nava's making a motion. I will second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next item on our agenda, update on the City of Brawley declaration of local emergency as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. And we have our Fire Chief Mike York to give us an overall presentation.
I think I broke. Morning, Madam Mayor, members of the council, Mike York, Fire Chief, Raleigh Fire Department. As you guys know, the emergency continues. Just a quick update on the current numbers provided last night through the Imperial County Operational Area EOC. In our area, we've tested a total of 11,131 people. 9,380 of those are negative. We've had a total positive count of 1,751. Of those 1,700 persons, 791 remain active, and good news is 931 have recovered. Of those active persons, in the hospital right now we have 60. The rest are recovering on their own, self-isolating, etc. Unfortunately, we have totaled 29 deaths in our area, and as a point of interest, the 70 to 79 age group was unfortunately hit the hardest. 10 out of those 29 came from that 70 to 79 age group. In our hospitals, like I said, we have 60 positive persons receiving care, with 4 additional suspected waiting on tests. With our 2 hospitals combined, in addition to their normal beds and ICU rooms, we have a surge capacity in our area of 23 beds. Right now, our surge capacity within our hospital is 2, or just 8% of our surge capacity. In addition to our hospital surge capacity, we have what's called a federal medical station has been established at IVC in their gym. I don't have their total bed count right now. It's a point of information I need to update. However, as of yesterday, it was reported that 4 people had been seen in there, but it is very wide open and ready to receive additional patients if that unfortunate event does occur. Our neighbors down to the south in Mexicali, information provided late last night, a large area population. They have a total positive count of 5,063 people, and unfortunately they've recorded 868 deaths in that area. Bringing it back home, we participate daily with our Imperial County Operational Area with their brief and their update, providing information, receiving information. We have received personal protective equipment items such as face masks. We've received a large shipment last week of bulk hand sanitizer so we can distribute it throughout our city. We're working with all of our other agencies, just a lot of interagency coordination to make sure that the personal protective equipment is being shared appropriately and that we can protect both our responders and make sure that we're getting the equipment we need for daily operations to continue. That concludes my report. If there's any questions.
Sam has a question.
Just to
Go ahead,
say,
Sam.
when I toured the IVC Medical Center, they have 80 beds set up in the main gym, and then they have a capacity, I think, for 20 or 30, and there's 2 separate tent-type structures, more like Quonset-type inflatable structures, and and they're for the more severe patients, and I think they can accommodate 20 or 30.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
I
Like
think
120 total or
yeah,
something, yeah.
There's 80 in the main gym, and those are for people that are recovering, that may not need the same care, because all the beds are kind of in the same area. They had 40 staff manning that, and they had a lot of extra equipment and all of that type of stuff for distribution to Southern California. So it's a pretty good setup. Counties involved, state and federal. We were given a tour the other day.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Can you repeat everything? I couldn't hear you.
Any other questions? Mike, I just had one on as far as the numbers and the criteria to move on, that one measurement that we're looking at under 8% in that 14-day period of positives. We're still, do you know what percentage we're at right now?
I believe yesterday we were at 16.8%. We were trending downward. What's being regarded as the Mother's Day spike is at the tail end of the 14 days period that we're in, and we're hopeful that we will see that trend move downward, not only better of our community, but that's also a very important metric at the state level for reopening businesses.
We'll do graduation day spike again.
Well-
Yes, and you know, thankfully within our county, we've had really, as many of you know, we did had a pretty well attended, organized demonstration. I wouldn't want to use the word protest. It was a very well attended, well coordinated demonstration last night. I know that some of our other county areas are anticipating spikes based on that kind of activity and, of course, worse activity that's occurred in their areas. So it's something that I know that the operational area EOC is monitoring and working with partners, both public safety and civilian partners, and the people that are even coordinating these events to ensure that masks are worn, social distancing is observed, et cetera.
Yeah, my understanding was that it was a peaceful protest, but obviously it's very difficult to do social distancing when you have something like that. So was it your observation that everybody was wearing masks, or the
I was
majority?
not on site.
Oh, okay.
I did monitor several live streams that were coming from the site. I know that some of our other staff members were there in some capacities. All the reports that I've received is that it was very well managed. And as far as social distancing goes in those type of events, it was okay.
Okay. Thank you so much. Does that conclude your report?
That is, if
Okay.
there's no other questions. I would like to introduce Ms. Katie Luna, our CEO of Brawley Chamber. She has a special report for you.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Katie.
Is that all right if I remove my mask? I think I can
I think
speak
so.
a little
I think
bit
so.
clearer without it on. It's a good muzzle. My husband likes it for that reason. Okay, so our Brawley Chamber is open, continues to be open, but now we are working in the office, and we are open by appointment only. So if there's anyone from the public that'd like to visit us, just give us a call and schedule an appointment. Going back to the positivity rate, we did hit that 16%. We are looking for 18% with the county, and we've been working with the health department and gently nudging the what ifs. So what if we get to 15%, 13%, 10%? Where can we, push the state to let us move a little quicker in opening our businesses or moving to that next stage? We don't have a clear answer, but we continue through the task force and Imperial Valley Business Recovery Task Force to work with the health department and the local health authority as a work group to address some of the demands and the needs on the business side. And so I think it's helpful for them to continue to hear that message of, well, can we stretch a little bit more and open one more sector of business? And so we continue to pound on that door, and we hope to see progress in the next couple weeks. We know that we do have that positivity rate is trending downward. As of yesterday, and I don't know if Chief York has a better update, but as of yesterday, there was one other metric that we had fallen behind on, and that is the skilled nursing PPE availability in the skilled nursing facilities. So hopefully as that's being addressed, we'll continue to see our positivity rate go down, and we'll be able to move to the next phase of opening. We know that once we meet that positivity rate and the county can file for the variance and get approval, then we can work a little bit more freely with the county to push them into, what's the next business we can get open. We want to get everyone open in a safe manner. So what can we do to continue addressing the positivity rate? One of the things that we can do is continue pushing our community to be tested. Even if you feel healthy, go out and get a test. If you feel sick, definitely go get a test. But that will help our number go down. The more we see healthy folks get tested, that'll also help our number go down. One other thing that the task force has created along with the public health department is a pledge. It's a pledge to our local business community. And it really stems from the need of uniting our community with one voice for the business community. And so the pledge, I'm asking today if the council, as you go back into your routines, is just to take a moment and look at that pledge and support us in that. And what it says in the pledge is, number one, that I support local business. And when we talk about supporting local business, that transpires in different ways. One of those we want to definitely support our local businesses is as they're opening, each business is going to have a different set of procedures and policies that they may not have had before. And so we're asking the public to support them in wearing your masks, washing your hands, staying your distance, following the guidelines that each business is putting out. It's a difficult time for our business owners. They haven't had to do this before. We're all navigating this boat for the first time. And so we want to support them as much as we can. And definitely we want to shop local. So, if we can use our local pharmacies, use our local stores that we have that are locally owned versus the big chains. We love our big chains. They're a necessity, but we also want to support our local mom and pops. We need to get them back in business and surviving. The task force with the county, and I know Mr. Lamore had been here to address the worksite specific plan that was created. I just want to re-emphasize that part of the guidance for businesses reopening is to develop a worksite specific plan. And we've tried to streamline that with the public health department to make it easy on businesses. We suspect the bigger businesses and the mid-sized businesses will have an easier time pulling on resources to have those plans in place. Many of them already have the plan in place, but if they don't, and definitely for our smaller businesses, they can go onto the task force website and download. It's a fillable plan. Check off the box and enter your information. So it's real easy. It's designed to help out the business and get them thinking about what can I do to protect my employees, myself, and my consumers. The biggest message at the end of the day is while we want business to open, business owners, it doesn't do any good for them to have a sick workforce. It doesn't do any good for them to have a sick consumer base. So we all need to do our part in protecting each other when it comes to this virus so that we can get back to business in a healthy and successful manner. So the worksite specific plan is a tool that's out there, and we want to encourage the businesses to use that if need be. Mm-hmm. The Business Recovery Task Force has been working with the local health authority and the county public health department to address some of the larger concerns that we have, mainly with regard to messaging, bringing the county together collectively from Calapat to Calexico, Nyland to Calexico, bringing everyone together under one message of making sure that the businesses know where to go to look for help, making sure that we're changing our narrative from what we've heard in the past is, well, there's nothing we can do about it, we're on the border, to, yes, we can take ownership and we can help move this dial and this process along. And so we really want the community to take ownership and help us move this process along faster so we can get our businesses back in order. And so we'll have more updates as that work group continues to work on their project. And so what's next? So the Business Recovery Task Force through this process has been surveying the needs, the PPE needs of our business community. We've talked to several, the city of Brawley, Rosanna, we've talked to other agencies as well as how can we get PPE readily available for our business community if they're having trouble finding it. And so we will be surveying the business community need as far as do we see that we're short in any way? Do we see that we need more masks or more sanitizer or more thermometers? What do we see as the need so we can address that and make sure that our businesses are being protected? And so that's the update I have for you, and be happy to take any questions.
Any questions from council? I do have I had a few phone calls after the last change where the governor approved the retail. And like you mentioned about the specific, the worksite specific plan, it's a long form, and I did share that information with a couple of businesses.
Thank
But
you.
I did tell them that they should probably contact the Brawley Chamber for further guidance.
Yes, absolutely.
And so have you seen any movement there as far as retail locally already opening or following the plan?
As far as opening, I personally have not been out to sort of take a tally of who's open and who's closed. We have begun picking up the phone and calling businesses to see, now that you can open, do you need a plan? Here's the plan. So we have received, over the last week, an influx. We had about 10 calls of folks that were inquiring about the plan. I don't know if they were all retail, but we know that they're now looking into how can they reopen. You know, the important thing, it was confusing on Friday with the message from the governor, because what I think a lot of folks heard was that it's up to the local county. And so it's important for us to just remember that it will be up to the county once we meet this positivity rate. So we also have to put in our efforts to get us moving forward. And once we meet that positivity rate and we're in the clear, then I think the county will have more flexibility, and we can, you know, from the business side and the business advocacy side, push a little bit harder. I just wanted to also make a note for our pledge. You can find that on our website, ivbizrecovery.com.
Okay. And I know individually you can do it on Facebook also. I saw it, so
Yes.
that's good. Okay. Anything else from council?
I think you already answered the question, Katie, but it'd be good for us to know maybe at a later date, as things are hopefully moving in the right direction, specific to Brawley, what businesses are left not open. I think we all know hair salons now, that, you know, those kind of those groups or categories. I think gyms, right? But I think it'd be really good for us, not just the council, but the public, to know what is open so we can go support it, you know, that kind of thing. So it kind of goes along the lines of what was just asked.
Okay. We'd be happy to
Yeah,
collect
that'd
that
be-
information
yeah,
and present
kind
it
of
to you.
from maybe from the membership or something.
Absolutely. And one of the other things that we've been discussing over the last week is that even though retail is now able to open, it doesn't mean that everyone's ready to open, and it doesn't mean the customers are ready to come back. And so we have our work cut out there as far as helping the businesses make their customer base feel secure and coming back. So it's going to be a slow restart, but we're getting there. And I'd be happy to provide that information.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
think George mentioned last meeting about, you know, again, doing the type of things we can do to go out, whether it's video or, you know, promotion, but mainly, you know, business opens, it'd be really good to showcase that. If we can say, hey, they're open, go support.
Right. So we're looking at, I don't know if George had anything to share about that. He was kind of taking the lead on, George, did you have anything to share?
We'll continue to work on it. I mean, I want to do something sooner than later, but, you know, obviously when things changing daily, it's kind of tough to, you know, kind of pinpoint exactly. I had thought of doing something sooner than later, but then there was the announcement by the state to open business, at least retail. But maybe that's a good time to kind of highlight what businesses are open.
Yeah.
So it'll be sooner than later. It's just with things changing frequently, it's kind of hard to pinpoint a time and a date.
Okay. Rosanna?
I have a couple comments on the topic
Okay.
that might be also
Fine. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Katie.
of interest to the council. So, and a few items raised by Ms. Luna as well. So with reference to the skilled nursing facility metric, that is a reference to available PPE on hand at the facility. It is in a caution status at the moment. County staff is working quite closely with that individual operator. An order has been placed for supplies that is anticipated to be filled. So really, the primary metric at this time that the county's tracking really closely with all interested parties is the rate of positive incidents. And, I know everybody is having their patients tested with reference to testing results and the rate at which change is measured over the 7-day look-back period. In the short span of 1 week, we moved from 29% to just above 16. So I think that is promising, provided we continue to practice social distancing and other measures to reduce the spread. Last night on the Hub, I did post a note to share with the public that there's a new dashboard that's now available through the Imperial County Public Health Department website. It specifically details the metric, performance to the metric. So it's a really good, easy to view. It's kind of hard to do the 7-day look back math, an individual to go and try to track how many numbers from day to day are increasing. This is a great way to quickly chart progress and show where we stand relative to the prior 7 days. I'd also like to note for the council and community that the County of Imperial has also offered to work with city staff as well as a couple of business operators to do a walkthrough on how to best position for preparedness. One of the things that the county has expressed is trying to be sure before improvements are installed. Let's say a given business wants to place dividers in between 2 tables or a food prep area inside of the kitchen. What they're hoping to do is deter investment in improvements that may produce other issues from a permitting point of view, and instead preempt some of those topics and help to expand the number of resources that are available to individuals who can ask questions. So we're fielding a lot of questions in our development services department about how can I best prepare for opening, instead of simply sending every single one of them to environmental health and having them get in line with all other business operators throughout the county. This will give our city staff the ability to help people navigate. So we are going to have the opportunity to work with 2 local businesses that are of different types. We have identified a restaurant operator that has voluntarily offered to get assessed, so we can help them understand this is how you would prep, and that'll be kind of the case study that we use for our staff and the Imperial County team to evaluate what are the types of arrangements that are likely to be part of in-house dining for restaurant operators.
That's like, asking the government to tell you how to do this or what.
Well, there are some very low-cost strategies for things like spit guards and other, and I think that is the intention, not to come in and say this is the one way to do it. It's more of to express in advance so that people aren't getting shut down after installing
So it should be
things.
positive. I mean, it
Yes,
should
it's
be
it's a
helpful.
proactive positive.
Helpful.
They fog you down when you walk in.
I have actually seen people self-spray
have
disinfectant.
too.
That's an interesting strategy.
Which I
But
don't
yes.
recommend, but.
Yeah, the aerosol's kind of hard to.
Instead of the fly thing, that blows air, blows
Actually,
steam,
one-
you get steamed in and out.
Actually, yeah.
It's desirable. But
My daughter walked into the house one day and my other daughter got the Lysol and sprayed her down, and I was like, I don't think we need to go that far.
we are also looking for one other business format type. We could use possibly a city operation, although we're not the best example because we have so few staff and we're not crammed together in space. Because we have such lean staffing, we're spread. So we're not the best workspace because of us being so sparsely populated in our buildings.
A volunteer sample.
Which is a good thing,
The intention is a positive one. It's not meant to be a negative interaction
Right.
at all. It's more of to serve as a resource and actually speak to the point of removing any mystery from the process. And I think if everybody goes to it with the right mindset, it can actually be a really good exchange. That's a great model for a particular operator to share with others, too.
I think so. Okay.
And that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Rosanna.
Yes, you're welcome.
Anyone else? Chief? Interim chief? Come on up.
Good morning, Madam Mayor.
Good morning.
City Council. Let's see if I can make that higher. I just wanted to give you guys an update on our city's involvement in yesterday's demonstration. So there was approximately 300 people there. There was not a single reportable incident of any type of crime or any issues at all. It went extremely smooth. We brought in our night shift, normally comes in at 7 p.m. They came in at 5. They covered the city. Our day shift went down to El Centro to help in case there was an issue, but with obvious direction that we would return immediately to the city if we had a problem here. So my personal experience has been that our county is unique in that the collaboration and the communication with every police chief, the sheriff's command staff, highway patrol, the border patrol is extremely valuable. They have 1,000 agents in our county, and all the other federal entities that are within our county, we are communicating with them weekly. And in some cases, it's 2, 3, 4 times a week. Your police chiefs, I can tell you, we're communicating almost hourly. What's going on? What's happening? What are we seeing on social media? How's that being looked into? There was a lot of false reporting yesterday on social media, and all of it was followed up on. So with the help of all the different agencies I mentioned, in addition to HSI and the FBI and the DEA, everybody helped. We have great teamwork, great collaboration, and yesterday went as good as it could go. And if there was a problem, there was significant preparations and staffing that would have helped us address any kind of issues. So.
Okay. Very happy to hear that
Super.
it all went well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no further business on the overall outlook as far as our local emergency, our next item on the agenda is the General Fund Enterprise and Special Funds Workshop, and I understand we're going to do that by Zoom, or were you going to do some preliminary work here before we?
We are prepared to continue today's council meeting to a time that works for the council. I believe the time discussed was 10:30. There are a couple of other items, if I may suggest that we take a moment to review before adjourning or continuing to this later time. And I also would like to note that item 3C, which was removed from the consent agenda, we've taken action on that item separately, and that has been noted at the request of Teamsters. My suggestion is that we work our way through departmental and informational reports
Finish
Okay.
the meeting.
and actually just skip the workshop component and then continue the workshop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
Thank you.
Thank you, Rosanna. For some reason, okay, here we go. Sometimes when we have these by the backside, it kind of loses my place. My problem. Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and continue then to item number 6, departmental reports. First on the agenda, item 6A, monthly staff report for June 2020, prepared by Personnel and Risk Management Administrator Shirley Bonillas. Welcome,
Honorable
Shirley.
Mayor, thank you. Council member Shirley Bonillas, Personnel and Risk Management. On page 46 of your agenda packet is the current staffing report. I'm happy to announce that we did swear in a dispatcher yesterday and a full-time police officer, so yay. We're down, we got 2 more on. We just have 1 dispatcher opening, 2 police officers. Chief updated me yesterday that we have 1 dispatcher in backgrounds and 1 police officer that's still going through the process in backgrounds. So that's very good news. And of course, we'll take any questions you may have on the report.
So that brings our vacant positions in police to 3?
3.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, one of those open positions is the SRO, School Resource Officer.
Okay, all right.
So as far as patrol, if we do get that 1 police officer in background successfully through the process, we'll have patrol fully staffed. Knock on wood, that doesn't happen too often.
Okay.
Any
Thank
other
you, Shirley.
questions?
Any questions from council on any of the status of our personnel? Okay. Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, moving on to item 6B, update on the emergency construction project at the Raleigh Water Treatment Plant to replace the components of 2 sedimentation basins and emergency purchase of sewage pumps. And we have our Public Works Director, Guillermo Cias. Welcome,
Good
Guillermo.
morning, Mayor, members of the council, Guillermo Sillas, Public Works Director. The emergency continues. The parts with name troughs arrived yesterday. The contractor will install them on the basin number 2 today and will complete the installation of the flights. Electrical connections of motors will also be performed today. It is expected to finalize the work on basin number 2 by this Friday. After a period of test operation of basin number 2, the trough on basin number 1 will be replaced. The new date of completion is scheduled to be July 13 to finalize all the project. Any questions that you might have?
No, I'm glad it's moving forward. I mean, it's been a long,
Yes, it's very
Period of
close.
time,
So
yeah.
we think that this Friday it will be completed.
oh, good.
But later on, there's a period of test of the new components for about, contractor is proposing 30 days, but can be reduced based on performance. But we are very close to
Okay.
complete.
Good to hear.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Guillermo. Moving on to item 6C, update on the emergency replacement of the 3 failing air conditioning units at the Brawley Police Department, presented by our interim police chief, Scott Shepherd.
Madam Mayor, City Council, similar to 2 weeks ago, we still have that short punch list. And yesterday, they were out working on some of the items that are on it. So I don't know specifically, but I was told not major things, but we want to make sure it's done right before that project's closed out. It does blow cold air, so we're happy on the inside, but I think it's actual installation concerns that the city had. So that's the
Okay,
only
well, that's
update.
also good news, because with the heat here, we need those air conditioner units working.
Absolutely, it works excellent. So,
Okay.
and hopefully more efficient since they're new.
Chief, did they address the cosmetic issues outside that were caused by the crane?
Those have been addressed, but I think we have some watering things that we're trying to straighten out, and then make sure that we get the, there was plastic sheets to keep the weeds out. So there's just a couple items we need to button up, and then there was some other stuff on the roof. But as far as I know, nothing significant.
Good.
Any other questions? Okay, Chief, thank
Chief.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 6D, update on the 2020 fireworks stand permits, presented by Fire Chief Michael York.
Good morning again, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Our fireworks stands have been approved for moving forward. We were in communication and received a notification from our County Department of Public Health that fireworks stalls would be considered permissible with the guidelines that other retail establishments have, such as social distancing, encouraging the avoidance of people gathering, and plastic shields between the customer and the seller. This year we have received 5 applicants. Our ordinance allows for up to 5 stands to operate within our city, so we did not have to have the drawing. Now that we have had the notification from the Department of Public Health, I've been in contact with the vendors, and we'll be moving forward on issuing the permits. Fireworks stands are allowed to be erected no sooner than June 23rd, and sales can begin on June 28th at noon. As a informational, we've worked very closely with our partners in the past in allowing the sales of these fireworks for fundraising purposes for these nonprofit organizations, and they do have good success. It's something to look forward to, so we're glad we're able to work with them through through all of these changes. Safe and sane fireworks are the only ones allowed within our city. No aerial devices, no devices from outside of the marked safe and sane. They're allowed to be possessed between June 28th at noon through July 6th at noon. And the times that they're allowed to be discharged is the same, although we encourage people to limit their activities to the 4th of July interval. And that is my report, if you have any questions.
So they actually can start using the fireworks June 28th?
Yeah,
Okay, so
that is what our ordinance allows. We do encourage people to keep it to the holiday, but our ordinance does allow the possession and discharge in those same time periods.
You know that requires a lot of care of our dogs for a longer period of time.
But those are the unsafe and insane.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
The safe and sane, aren't they?
Yeah.
As you guys know, last year we amended our ordinances to increase the administrative fine for unlawful activity regarding our fireworks. We will be reaching out with community messaging to ensure that people are educated and just encouraged to obey by the ordinances and have consideration for their neighbors as well as their pets.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to informational reports. There's on your backup, there's the record of building permits, pages 47 and 48. Unless there's any questions, we'll move on. Any comments or anything on that one? And then we'll go ahead and move on to council member reports. And we'll go ahead and start with Councilmember Wharton. You want to start on council member reports?
I'll be really brief, but I just wanted to comment again, really appreciate the Valley's coordination and response, not only yesterday, but also those that were obviously involved in the demonstration that really pretty proud of the fact that Imperial Valley is hopefully an example for some of the other areas, so appreciate that. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Nava?
I just want to thank staff for the work they've done, not only on the budget, but the day-to-day work on it, very difficult with COVID-19 and all the precautions we're taking. It's been really challenging. And for the small business owners, obviously it's challenging times for them, so anything we can do to keep supporting them, that would be very good. I also want to congratulate the graduating high school seniors here in town. I know this is unprecedented, at least in my lifetime, where they haven't been able to go through a graduation ceremony and, you know, all the other things that come along with that and the family celebration. So, congratulations to the graduating seniors, and stay blessed and stay safe. I know of two people here in Brawley that I know, either associates or personal friends, that have passed away from COVID-19 or complications from it, and I just hope everybody remains safe and is careful and taking care of themselves. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Couchman?
Okay. I just want to commend city staff for their job, and they keep on the job all the time. Public safety, et cetera, we see them every day out there. I would like to say that it's a great temporary medical facility out at IBC. It is for referral only from the two hospitals. It's not like a walk-in clinic or anything like that. So just to caution the public about that. You have to be referred from one of the hospitals in order to enter that health facility. They're doing a great job out there. We have a lot of support from the state in that respect. As far as yesterday goes, I think there's a lot of false information that runs along on Facebook and social media platforms. I think we all need to just kind of stay a little bit calmer to work our way through all of these issues that we're dealing with, because we're dealing with multiple issues at this point in time. And always check with local authorities. If you have a problem, certainly, or see something unusual, certainly call it in, but kind of everybody, I think, needs to get a little bit calmer out there. As far as that goes, that's about the only tour that I've taken. I'm in close contact with officials from El Centro, around the county, et cetera, and we all kind of work together as best we can, I think, and hopefully we'll continue to do that and be successful in whatever we need to get done here within our city and also within our regional area. Other than that, that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Amby?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have really anything significant to report. All the rest of the council members have basically said what needs to be said this morning, and I do appreciate all the hard work, the effort that city staff are putting in a very difficult time to get work done, and producing what we need them to produce. It is it's a remarkable feat. So thank you, and I was very impressed with the organization and the peacefulness of the demonstration yesterday evening. As Donnie mentioned, watched it on social media. And as Sam said, you know, there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of rumors that swirl, and it just takes off like wildfire. So I do try to check and double check and triple check before I share anything, because, you know, so much of it is misinformation. But I complain from time to time about living in Imperial Valley because of the heat, but at this time I am very grateful to live here, and the sense of community that we have, and the overall the feeling of peace and safety that we have here is pretty remarkable when you look at the news. And I know that what we see on the news is probably about the worst that we have to offer throughout the country, as far as people's reactions and even the you know, people taking advantage of a crisis like this. But I was just very impressed with our community, and the Black Lives Matter group that put together the demonstration yesterday. They did a good job of keeping it organized, keeping it peaceful. I appreciated the way they reached out to different factions within the community even. So I was just very impressed with that. I continue to not do a whole lot out in the community, other than, you know, fielding phone calls from different community members that are concerned about things like homeless issues and that kind of thing. I did get to zoom into a chamber board meeting last week, and shared information with them. And there is, again, some misinformation swirling out there about the homeless issue, specifically to having to do with the voucher program for our local motels. And so I'm getting some information, you know, from a few different people to clear that up. But anyway, just thank you to each one of you for doing what you're doing on the council and within our city staff. And I'm praying for recovery for everyone in our business community, and for peace in our city. Thank you.
Okay, well, I too want to basically have the same sentiments that everybody else has. I think when we started with the pandemic, we said that these were unusual, I think we called it unusual times. And now, as we've been moving forward, and we're into the third month, and then with the new events that have just happened, I think it's more like troubling times. But I also do appreciate all the work that our city staff does, and with less staff even, you know, of us calling and checking on things and trying to give the correct information out to the public. So all the work that our fire department does, our police department does, and everybody is really, truly appreciated. I think we all want the same thing. We want to promote peace and unity in our community. And like Luke stated, I think there's times when I actually do feel lucky that we live in a smaller community where we feel safer. Trying to stay positive. You know, we all have children or grandchildren and relatives that are out there, and I know it's been a little difficult for us to try to stay positive and enjoy birthdays and graduations with our kids, and try to keep them positive and not be scared of what the future holds for them. So I do have a graduate from high school tomorrow, and so we're just, you know, just trying to stay as positive as possible with also, but at the same time, sharing with them what's going on in the world out there, and you know, keeping peace and unity in our hearts. So thank you. And for those that have lost loved ones with the pandemic, our hearts go out to, and sympathy to all of you. Okay. Okay, then we'll move on to city manager report. Rosanna?
Nothing further at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. City attorney? Nothing further. Okay, thank you. City clerk? Okay, well then we'll go ahead and go adjourn into, we're gonna do closed session, I guess. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and go into closed session at this time. And thank you all of you that attended today, that will be leaving us at this time. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. We're good, and we gotta kind of hustle.
A of our agenda, general fund, enterprise and special funds workshop, and presentation, discussion, and staff direction. And we're gonna start with Rosanna, or are we gonna start with, who are we starting with?
We're going to go ahead and start just in one moment, please, Mayor.
Okay.
I just want to confirm that I am, in fact, the recording has started.
Okay.
Yes, it has.
Okay, thank you.
We starting with you or with Tyler?
Yes, I am beginning today's item, which is a workshop in a modified format. So first want to thank the council for adapting to some rapidly changing circumstances today. And a lot of effort has been put into preparing materials that you have in printed form and handed off to you and available. So there are 2 source documents that we'll be relying on today, which are our worksheets for revenues and expenditures, which provide a great deal of detail for any of the services that the city provides that fall within the general fund revenue source. And then we also have included an extensive description of capital projects that are basically the high level commitments in our special and enterprise funds throughout our city operations. So what I would like to do is tag team with our finance director, Tyler Salcido, on a PowerPoint presentation that we have prepared. Tyler has been working tirelessly to prepare the high-level detail that is the backbone for today's presentation. He's also had the opportunity to meet with city departments and explore both a takeoff on where we left in our prior budget preparation process, as well as look ahead at things that are important that are planned for in the upcoming 12 months. Before we jump into the PowerPoint itself, I do want to note for both the council and community's benefit that the city is on schedule to adopt its budget for fiscal year 2020-2021. To date, we have made presentations to the City Council with the mid-year budget review, as well as presented for the City Council's acceptance the audit for prior fiscal year. We had a strategic planning session that also guided some of the discussion and have had a detailed presentation on the known impacts of COVID-19 to revenue sources and various city operations. So all of these provide some really critical context for budget preparation and decision making on a going forward basis. So at this point, what I will do is advance our PowerPoint presentation, which is available to council in printed form and will also be available for viewing on the screen. Is everyone seeing slides at this juncture?
No.
No. Okay. And one moment, please. Bring this through shortly. Here we are. Share. And my apologies.
Okay, it's there.
Okay.
Yep.
you're on slide 1 with it, which is just our title slide. Okay, so the way today's presentation is organized is really a deep dive on the general fund, knowing that the general fund typically is the most distressed of all of our city funds and involves the widest range of services that the city provides. Okay. So one of the trends we have seen in past budget cycles is that this is the fund that really captures many of the services that we would describe as comprising the quality of life in the city of Brawley. It funds public safety, library services, and parks and recreation, as well as a number of areas that are critically important to supporting economic development. So that would be in the planning and building and engineering divisions. So one of our greatest challenges over time has been the increasing cost of doing business and the fact that revenue growth hasn't always been in tandem with the cost of doing business increasing. In other words, our revenues are not perfectly matched with our expenditures. And so what this does is really place the city in a position where we need to think critically about the types of services that are highest priority and what offerings, in addition to those core services, we have the resources to actually deliver to the community. So as it currently stands, the city is a full service city. We're very proud of the types of programs that we have offered through our Parks and Recreation Department and our library main branch and Del Rio branch. And I think it's been a great point of pride that Brawley has had the ability to offer a vast array of free, courtesy, and low-cost fees and charges for many of the services that we do deliver to the public. So unfortunately, the budget process is the time where we really have to come to grips with what fiscal constraints we face and how we can most responsibly address primary needs within our revenue horizon. Historically, we have used a variety of creative methods for trying to keep services at the same level as prior fiscal years. But what we see in this year, beginning 2020 and 2021, is a new variable in play, which is COVID. And that has set into motion a more complicated and challenging set of circumstances to continue to deliver the services we've provided year over year. And so what we'd like to do is first begin with a historical outlook of how our general fund revenues have presented over time. And what we use as the source of revenues, the source documents, are our actual audited numbers, not necessarily our projected. So the four most significant sources of revenue that the city provides through the general fund are property taxes, the vehicle license fee swap, sales tax, and utility user tax. And what you can see as you look at each of these over time is, depending on what might have occurred during a given fiscal year, significant growth cannot be projected from one year to the next. A lot is driven by larger things occurring in the economy. On the sales tax front, for instance, the city's one of its most significant sales tax generators is fuel. And when fuel prices fluctuate, so does our sales tax generating potential. So with the guidance of HDL and the County of Imperial, as well as other reliable sources, the finance department has developed projected revenue values for fiscal year 2020, 2021. It is a point worth mentioning that last year's budget preparation was our finance director's first with the city of Brawley, and we were very closely tracking to budgeted values in the current fiscal year until the COVID pandemic emergency declaration was declared in March. And we're still trying to understand the financial implications of COVID. But I make this point in that I hope to convey to council and the community that these are the best estimates that we can provide with the information available. And so if there are any questions on this slide or any others as we go, you're absolutely welcome.
Excuse me, Rosanna, if I could add just a point.
Sure.
To, under actual to date, that was the end of May, with the exception of the transient tax and utility tax, we're gonna, even with the COVID, we're gonna meet or exceed the budget, which is some good news, with the exception of those two items for this year.
Great.
Okay, I have a question on the utility tax. It shows quite a bit of a downturn on the utility tax for actual this year. But so is that going to be, we're not going to meet that one? Is that what you just said, Tyler?
That's going to be a little tougher to meet this year. There's some big ones that come in June from the IID and a couple others. But if, you know, depending on what they're seeing, I'm not sure if they're going to reimburse us based on, as you had seen in earlier IID reports, that their collections are way down. So I'm not sure how that's going to affect the payment to us.
Okay.
Any other questions on that slide? Okay, thank you. So an area that we'd like to highlight in today's presentation is what some of the key differences and expenditures were from the current fiscal year to what we're projecting next year. And probably the most significant adjustments that we are facing have to do with workers' compensation, our pension obligations, and our liability insurance. So in total, if nothing changed from last year to this year, in our general fund, we were experiencing an increase in the cost of doing business of $474,000. And what we hope to demonstrate in the second half of this slide is how those increases are broken up among the various pension types. So as council is aware, in recent years, there was a distinction made between classic members that are miscellaneous or safety and PEPRA members. PEPRA contribution rates are very different and have different retirement ages as well. What you can see in looking through the various increases is for every dollar earned, for instance, a safety classic member, our contributions went from 23.67% to a figure, I'm sorry, it grew from 21.93% to 23.67%. So you take your entire payroll amount and add another 1.75 to it, and that is simply the cost of retaining the same number of people year over year that are classic members. And the same goes for classic miscellaneous. You see an increase of just over 0.75%.
Rosanna,
yes.
As far as the safety classic, because that's the most expensive, do we have still a lot of personnel in that category?
The way I would describe it is the composition of our police and fire departments. For anybody that had a career that began before 2012.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone with less than 8 years of experience would be a PEPRA in general, and anybody with greater than would be a classic. And so we do still have within our organization, I can provide you perhaps with some additional detail as a follow-up on that, the composition. And if I look to our finance director, she may have more of that at her fingertips than I do right at this moment in terms of composition. Let me see if I can add her in.
Ooh, Shirley, HR?
Yes.
Okay. Tyler's laughing because I know. Okay.
Oh,
just wondering, I know that that number is probably going down, but I just wondered how many we still have on,
Yeah.
on payroll.
A point of
Rosanna?
clarification on that, that is different than what you see, the 129,000, that PERS UIL is, those are two separate items. So the pension increase just on our normal city rates is down below, and there's still an additional $130,000 of unfunded accrued liability. Those are two separate items, just to make sure that everybody understands that point.
Oh, okay.
Rosanna, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you, so I do apologize.
I can just answer the question if that would be okay.
Sure.
Okay. As Rosanna said, anybody hired prior to January 1st, 2013 is classic. Anybody after is PEPRA. It's about a 50-50 split right now. Fire is probably 60% classic, where PD's turnover creates the PEPRA. One little caveat, though, is that if they transfer, if an employee transfers to us and they were classic somewhere else, even though we hired them after January 1st, 2013, they remain a classic as long as they meet the other criteria.
Mm-hmm.
But to answer your question, it's just about a 50-50 split at PD and about a 60-40 at fire.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
So the key point that we wish to emphasize on this slide is the cost of the year-over-year increases that are necessary to simply maintain. As we know, when we began last fiscal year, we had a gap between revenues and expenditures that was necessary to fill with one-time monies to address. That value was in the $400,000 to $500,000 realm. So when you look at that gap last year and what the cost of doing business increases to in the subsequent fiscal year, we're in the $1 million realm for trying to figure out how we can reconfigure operations, maximize service delivery with a finite number of dollars available to do it.
Just for clarification, I think Tyler mentioned it. So the top part is the unfunded liability total. And then in addition, we would have to include the increases of what it's currently costing us to support the pension, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So where this brings us is a juncture with some very difficult decision making. As both Tyler and I participate in many discussions among city managers and finance directors across the state, the examples that we keep seeing other agencies point to as practices they plan to rely on include freezing cost of living adjustments and merits, working with their bargaining units to preserve as many positions as possible, but turn off these levers for increased pay. It's also looking to eliminate capital projects that would be funded by funding sources that may be experiencing some form of distress. So in our case, that would be the general fund. In our circumstance, there are very, very few projects that we undertake from a capital point of view that are general fund supported. So while that might be an option, freezing COLAs and merits, eliminating capital projects, those aren't really features that we have currently in play.
council is well acquainted with the status of our labor negotiations and the 2-year arrangements we have with 3 of our 4 bargaining units. Teamsters is the exception in that we were only able to reach a 1-year agreement to freeze merits. What I think is most important to note is while these strategies are available to many communities, we made these moves in prior years, and therefore the potential for savings is not something that is a fit for our circumstances. Rainy day funds are typically used through these difficult and unanticipated moments. We have relied on that approach to get us through some other very challenging periods in the city's time. So those types of options aren't going to be a fit for Brawley's circumstance. As you can see, expenditures continue to outpace revenues, and they're for many things that are outside of the city's control. So for things that we can control, we do our best to practice fiscal prudence. For those that aren't, we try to weather difficult periods of time for the city and stay whole. COVID-19 has obviously thrown a monkey wrench into many, many operations, and our agency is not excluded from that. And as we saw in the last budget cycle, we are oriented towards finding solutions that allow us to have offerings for the community, but incorporate different methods of cost recovery because we've had such extended periods of no increases in charges or fees. And the hard part is that if we don't move in this direction, we do expect the imbalance to really cause a worse set of circumstances than what we currently face and threaten our fiscal solvency. At the strategic planning meeting, we did take some time to talk through some of our issues that are maybe behind the curtain that I think are important for consideration. We have a very, very aged software solution that handles many of our financial transactions. It is the backbone for all of our business activities, and we continue to be challenged by the ability to perform key tasks in a timely and efficient way because of the age of this software that's well beyond the size of our organization. Our organization is larger than the typical size of customers, and the ability to interface with other departments is greatly restricted and simply only available through the finance department, which has been a big obstacle to progress in a number of ways. So as was forecast in our strategic planning meeting, where we see ourselves at this time is really at a fork in the road where we have to make some key decisions about what is primary and critical and what might be secondary. It doesn't mean it's not valued by the community. It doesn't mean that it's not important to quality of life, but as we face circumstances with many fewer resources available, there's this need to sort. And I think this sorting shown in the slide is meant to give you kind of a what is projected as highest priority if decisions are before us, which I think, today's hope is to get some feedback from the council to help get us through this next 12 months. It doesn't have to be the forever the forever arrangement, but it certainly is extremely important to figuring out how we spread the resources among the most critical of services and what we do to keep some of the other services alive in a lesser form until we have other methods to expand what's delivered. And so you can see what we've done is sort public safety, water and sewer services, building and planning, streets and maintenance, and really the way we're organized as an agency of street and maintenance is streets and utilities, and property maintenance. Property maintenance is what captures all of our park facilities, all of our city properties. They do have a cost with keeping them safe, and we need to have an eye towards ensuring that we're not creating attractive nuisances. So that's why that particular item falls into primary service. In the secondary service category, we find ourselves looking at rec, library and literacy, code enforcement, and graffiti abatement. It doesn't mean that these things have to go away in their entirety. It simply is a reference to our ability to offer the full set of possibilities through these vehicles may need to be restricted for a period of time until more resources are available. So what is included in the draft revenues and expenditures is a set of assumptions that have to do with secondary services as well as primary services. COVID has changed what we can currently provide as a city in a number of our typical and traditional settings. So what we've done is taken the budget gap and assumed that if activity is not possible to safely staff and deliver at various city facilities, then we can safely assume that the first half of the year will not include us rolling out typical activities that occur during that window. So usually in the spring and into the summer, we're preparing for a robust set of program offerings from a Parks and Recreation point of view. We typically bring on a large number of temps to assist with supporting various city leagues and offerings through the Lions Center, both the pool and climate controlled area of the Lions Center as well. At this point, what we are assuming in the budget to address both COVID and our fiscal constraints is not offering adult and youth rec programming through December. And so what this means, we don't assume power usage at our city parks. We don't assume staffing, lights to be turned on and off. All of that is zeroed out, assuming not occurring through December. We also are assuming that the senior center and our branch, main branch library, as well as Del Rio branch, that they are closed. Now, it's quite possible that COVID-19, maybe we end up with relief, maybe we don't between now and December. It's really unclear. We recently heard from the superintendent of Raleigh Elementary School District some of their plans for transition in the fall. You know, I think all of us are working with the best information available. But what is included in our proposed estimates are the assumption that these activities will not take place through December of this year. So what other assumptions went into closing the gap? We are proposing some staff reductions at the library. As you may recall, a series of layoffs occurred as the emergency declaration was declared. And those were some very difficult decisions, but were carried out because we were wanting to preserve our limited resources for emergency expenditures. It's still not clear how the city is going to financially recover from COVID-related expenses incurred, but our hope is that we have the opportunity to get reimbursed. If we don't, we didn't want to continue to staff facilities that aren't offering services at this time. So in the 2020-2021 budget, there are 2 staff reductions that are proposed that would eliminate 2 full-time permanent staff for that period that runs July 1 through December 2020. We are not proposing to bring back code enforcement. You might recall the first half of last year, we did have a code enforcement officer, a temp code enforcement officer in play. Those duties would be absorbed with other priorities into our development services department. Graffiti abatement would not be staffed. Graffiti abatement would be carried out by our own city staff at city-owned facilities and then conveyed as an owner responsibility in other parts of the city. With the onslaught of COVID, we laid off janitorial staffing for the admin office, as well as a part-time maintenance worker who was at our police department 5 days a week. We are not proposing to restore that. And we're not proposing to perform 2 critical capital projects that are on the horizon and continuing to represent a very important set of improvements to city properties. These are the pool replastering project and the roof replacement project. I take the time to note these in the presentation because I think these are extremely important facilities that we need to keep focused on what resources we can secure to advance the improvements. The pool replastering is key because continued use and permitting requires that the plaster is in a safe condition. And the roof that is referenced for the Lions Center, we have experienced unusual rains in the last 2 years. We are unable to get warranty work performed on our roof at the Lions Center because of the age of the roof as a whole. So a total roof replacement is the prudent approach, but we're not in a position from a general fund point of view to take on that project at this time. So these are all the things that I know are really important to the council and really important to perhaps highlight as well. These are items that we might be able to place on hold for 6 months or in some instances a full fiscal year, but they're not things that can be ignored forever or deprioritized forever.
Rosanna?
Yes.
This is Sam. The roof replacement, how much is that going to cost us? I think you probably told us before, but I can't remember.
It's in the 300 to 400,000 realm.
Okay.
And the replastering?
I'm going to look to Guillermo for one moment. If I recall correctly, it is hang on one second. Let me see if I can pull him up.
I believe that was in the vicinity of $500,000.
Okay.
Okay. Well, if we're not going to have those facilities open for any kind of activity, it probably makes sense to put that off for a while. I don't think you can go very long with that, but I mean, if it's a year, months, or whatever, I mean, I don't know if you're not going to open up those facilities, although I think it's a little bit unreasonable to think we're not going to ever open up those facilities and we're not going to any kind of activities there. I'm assuming over time there will be a resumption of some activities in all of those areas. They're both important but they're not probably critical at this point in time. Okay, so that's kind of the way I kind of look at that. If you're not going to open them right now and they may be closed through the summer, and that's because of COVID, not necessarily all budget, part of that's COVID, then maybe it's not quite as critical at this point in time. However, I think we've got to look at some alternatives to getting that done in some way.
But I do think that COVID and budget are hand in hand. I mean, it's really, you got to figure for every month that we're going through this, and this is going on 3 months, for every month, it's probably setting us back 3 to 4 months. So,
yes,
you know, we're probably 18, 24 months out before things clear up. If it were to end right now, you know,
yes.
And so I'm sure it's going to set us back quite a bit monetarily. I mean, who knows what sales tax and how long that's going to be postponed, the collection of sales tax, and how that impacts us and other things. So it's just going to be really difficult for us to move forward. Thankfully, we do have some money. Unfortunately, it's relinquishment funds, but we do have some money to be able to tap into things. It's just that's not the necessarily intended purpose. But I'm in agreement in that if we need to, you know, forego certain activities in certain departments just to, you know, preserve our cash, I think that's very important to consider.
With reference to the, it just might be maybe something of interest to the council. With reference to the pool and roof, on the roof end, we continue to search for private support. We have a couple of leads that are very favorable. So we're hopeful that we're going to have the chance to secure a community investment on that front, but the timing is unclear. What happens in the interim is not necessarily a problem for the space being taken out of use, but the roof's current state causes water damage on a regular basis that presents issues in the restroom facilities that are necessary for pool operations. So we've gone through a set of improvements that were very temporary in nature to get the restroom facilities.
Lost you.
So,
We lost part of that.
what did you lose?
I lost part of the thing. It just kind of like blanked out for a minute.
Oh.
Back on now.
You fell asleep, Sam.
No.
Rosanna?
So what I was describing was some water damage had been, had taken place in the restroom facilities. Those restrooms have been repaired on one occasion, but in the following period, we were very much aware that the only way to completely eliminate ongoing damage is the roof replacement. So our hope is to secure community support for the roof. We have a number of leads that I think are great prospects, and we'll continue to pursue those opportunities within the next fiscal year. So it's not so much that the roof needs to be in play for there to be city services. In order to protect the asset, the roof needs to be replaced. So we're continuing to look creatively about how this can be accomplished, and we're hopeful that we'll have some information in the near future to share with council on it. With reference to the pool replastering, the city is going to be the recipient of funds from the state of California for maintenance. It's a one-time allotment of maintenance or resources for maintenance activities, deferred maintenance activities. It is in the realm of $200,000 to $300,000. It'll be up to the council to decide how, what, if it's a single park, if it's different types of features within city properties you wish to have addressed, but that is also on the horizon and a potential funding source for that capital improvement.
What is the time frame on that one?
The state of California has not given us a date and month, and we're hopeful that because it's tied to a park bond, that those resources continue to be secure and not subject to other budget changes in priority. We can come back to the council with more information on the timing of it, whether it's within the next 12 to 24 months. Obviously, to undertake that project, it needs to, it requires the bandwidth of our Public Works Department to take a project like that out to bid. And what you'll see in a later part of the workshop is a very long list of capital projects that Public Works is currently seeking to undertake in the next 12 months.
So as far as the pool replastering, if things were to go well with the pandemic and we would be able, let's say, I don't know, in the coming year, be ready to reopen the pool, is that pool usable, or does the replastering have to be done before we could reopen the pool?
At this time, we're hopeful that the pool is usable and not, and continues to operate with a valid permit from the health department.
Do you anticipate that we will open any kind of programs in the summer, or will the COVID pretty much eliminate that?
All programs are proposed for temporary suspension through December. So no programs would be offered.
Okay, and how does that impact some of the things that we're going to, as we start the school year, which they won't probably be going back to school necessarily, that impact community activities as it relates to in the November, January time, especially if the state reopens in September, August, whatever we want to talk about here. How is that going to impact us as a city with the Lions Center primarily? I mean, the pool for summer, I think, is somewhat of a critical thing, but I don't think they're going to allow us to open because of COVID for some of that during the summer. But as we move into the September, October timeframe, and then into the November, December timeframe, some of that's going to be critical, I think, for discussion, I think, at that point in time. I think we're good for 3 or 4 months, but what happens after that?
Right. Well, I think that's the hope of this workshop, to hear from council. Are these proposed cuts the cuts you can tolerate or not? All of them, any cut proposed is going to result in a change of offerings to the public and disappointment that the services are not accessible due to resources. So it's a question of which service are you supportive of suspending at this time, given our fiscal constraints?
Well, regarding the pool, it seems like we have operating costs that are ongoing, whether anyone's using it or not.
Yeah, that's correct.
And really, the smallest part of those costs seems like the lifeguards in comparison with the chemistry and utilities to keep the pool open or keep it maintained even. So I don't know how much of a savings we're looking at to keep it closed as opposed to, opening it up for swimming in the later part of the year. But, these are going to be some difficult decisions as far as service levels. And as I said before, I think people are going to be more understanding this year than they would be in previous years because of COVID and all the cuts that everyone's going to have to be making.
So what's proposed for pool operations is for them to, in the current estimates, is proposed for them to resume in January, not that the pool's closed for the year. So it's simply taking the first half of the year, July 1 through December. At this point, we don't have any indication from the Public Health Department that swimming activities are going to resume or be permitted to resume.
Yeah.
I guess, another way to look at it is if accelerated use were possible, then the council could consider it on a case-by-case basis. But it's going to place the council in a difficult position for every group that comes forward that they want to see the same free services or low-cost services previously provided. So it's kind of more than just the cost of the operations. There are many other features to possibly consider. And I think Tyler may have had some other items he wanted to share there.
Rosanna, just a quick question regarding well, I'm concerned about the pool replastering and the roof replacement, and I'm thinking that we might want to possibly take advantage of the time that they're not being used to go ahead and start whatever project we could start as far as the replastering or the roof replacement. You said that there might be some money for the roof replacement, but you didn't say when that would be. Is that this year, within the next couple of months, or what are you looking at?
I can't share a timeline at this time, but I would be more than happy to talk with you at greater length.
I'm just thinking that since we're not using the pool, and also, I mean, the roof obviously needs to be fixed or replaced, that this might be a good time to get those fixed or in order before we have to start using them. It might be
so our ability to deliver that project at the same time as several key roadway projects would be very challenging.
Okay.
It'd be Legion and Wildcat is where we are in terms of public works bandwidth. So going out to bid on pool replastering would mean one of those wouldn't go forward in the same way.
And just a comment on Mayor Pro Tem Hamby's comment on the public, on the pool. The expenses are more in the latter part of the year due to heating of the pool. You started in with the, the colder months, and when we shut her down this last go around, it was anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000 a month lower by not heating that pool. So it is scheduled to be open, but just know the latter part of the year is more expensive than the first part of the year.
So there could be some benefit to closing during those type of months for repairs, as opposed to, say, during the summertime when people are using the pool a lot more. But now we're kind of faced with this quandary that we have it shut down right now because of COVID, but we can't do it. And then because there's they might be, even if it wasn't COVID, there'd be heavy usage. So then we go to winter months when we could say, look, we're not going to heat it for 3 months, or a month, we're going to replaster and everything. We would have some savings in that. The one thing I would caution everybody maybe, and just from my personal viewpoint, is if we receive some form of funding for either of those, we may have to make a decision and follow through with some money from the city for the partial funding, because some of those may pay for 50% or 75%, but we usually have to come up with some money anyway. So I think we have to keep that in mind also.
And again, the intention in listing them is just to make sure that if resources were within our reach at this moment, those would be 2 projects that city staff recommend be addressed.
Okay.
Okay. So this next slide is one we annually provide to help give a picture of where the city stands from a general fund point of view and the resource allocations to certain city functions. So what you can see from this display is how our resources, how the pie of general fund dollars, which is about $17 million, how it is carved up among the various line items throughout city services. So for instance, animal control. Animal control, an absolutely essential service put to incredible use. The bulk of that 1% of the overall general fund is actually tied to animal sheltering services, with a small portion or a modest portion going to the single staff member that staffs that activity. You'll also see, I guess one of the questions that is likely to come up is, well, how much does the city really value parks, rec, and the library? If you take the line items that are shown as parks, rec and Lions Center, rec league, senior center, and library, you see that the city typically devotes about, let's see, 70, just shy of 10% to parks and library related activities. Now, I'm sure we'd all love to see more go to those areas because our facilities are highly utilized. Many of our city-run leagues are high demand with incredible participation. Really, those programs that have found great success are those that have been sustained through the years. And so we see, those large followings that look forward to, whether it's basketball league or adult softball or girls softball. We have an incredible amount of interest in those services. Another question that could come up is how much does the city value public safety? When you look at police protection and fire-related services together, those comprise about, 56% of the overall budget.
56. 55, yeah.
So those are presented there as well. And the other, there are a number of activities within city operations that really are support functions for other services to be delivered. We couldn't function without a finance department. It simply just would not be possible. So when you look at what we devote to the admin features of what it takes to run a city, that is a portion of the pie as well. You'll see a couple of areas where there are asterisks noted. Those are identified with some notes below. I think it's really key for that which has 2 stars and that which has 3. These are grant-funded activities or ones that have a 100% cost recovery component. So while engineering, for instance, is charged to the general fund, it is paid back by a number of other sources, including quite frequently and extensively grants that we are successful recipients of. LAMs, when it is in operation and preschools are open, are 100% grant funded activities. So while they're shown as a 1% cost to the general fund, they are recovered as such as well. And then the non-departmental, just want to note, there is a $1.8 million figure. That is the actual bond payments that are required to pay for our pension obligation bonds. So a big part of the pie, 11%, as a standalone POB payment at about $1.6 million. Any questions on these allocations, kind of high level breakouts of how individual departments might be presented here?
I think we talked, Rosanna, one time about the LAMPS. If we're not using it right now, are we able to utilize that funding for anything else?
I will turn to Marjo for a moment on that. LAMS, just as a quick prep too, and let me see if I can get her off of a mute function here, if I may.
Can you hear me?
Oh yes, great. Hi, Marjo.
Yes.
Hi. LAMS being 100% grant funded are reimbursed for the functions that we serve and the events that we do. The money cannot be used for anything except towards LAMS.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
And if, for instance, right now, LAMS is a temporary suspend form. Because of preschools not being open, our employees were sent home. When preschools reopen and it makes sense to staff up and begin delivering those services again because they're allowed by the health department and CDC guidelines, we will roll out that service with the expectation that we will be reimbursed. Any further questions on that side? So this next slide shows the difference between revenues and expenditures in the last several fiscal years. Last year, you may recall that we tapped interest earnings from our highway relinquishment funds to address that bridge, and we are estimating what those values are as we finish out the next fiscal year. The difference that's shown on the rightmost column for fiscal years ended 16, 17, and 18 are what were ultimately draws from the reserve to maintain those really high service levels that have been part of our city offerings.
Okay, explain, question.
Yes.
Rosanna, does the 15,835,728 in revenues include that interest that we provided into that fund from the relinquishment funds?
That, Councilmember Couchman, that's for 2020. That's for this year.
Oh, that's 2020. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so,
it's, yeah, it's budgeted at $458,000 or somewhere along there.
okay. So that does not include any of, does the 15,835,728 include reserves and other things that were sources of revenue?
That's it. It includes revenues, transfers from enterprise funds,
Okay.
yeah, all those types of items.
Okay, so that's the complete package. Okay. All right.
Tyler, but on the fiscal year 2019, the math doesn't jive as far as the difference.
Did I do it? I might have did a typo. I can follow up on that. It's 830. Yeah, it's
it's not 20. It's 20.
Yeah,
32. I think.
Yeah, I apologize for that.
Okay. It's 34. I guess you left off the 3 there, I think.
34?
I don't know, something close to that, I think. Let me see.
But in the other one, it talks about the difference being the 1,300,000. And for 2019, we were 30,000 to the good.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, 31,000.
Yeah.
31,763 to the good.
All right.
I believe the reason why is because we received some grant reimbursements that paid us back for costs incurred. So sometimes,
and there was there was some cost savings that you had started, for example, cash in lieu and that type of thing. That's
right.
Okay.
That's true. That's true. That's probably it. It should be a little more, but.
All right.
Hey, Tyler, I had a question on the, I guess I should have asked it on the first slide, on the revenues. Did you include the TOT revenues?
No, that's not included in there.
Oh, is there a reason or?
We just took the highest 4 revenue generating for the general fund.
Okay. Do we have any idea what the revenue is for the TOT?
I can pull it from the book here.
All right.
So if you look at your bound budget document, You will see TOT, let's see, is projected as $301,200 in the next fiscal year. Our actual year to date is $337,674. But because we have so many extended stays happening at our motels, and we've got COVID going on at the same time, which might deter other types of traffic,
It does.
those are reduced values for next fiscal year.
Yeah, I assumed a 25%, estimated 25% decline in TOT revenues. And as Rosanna said earlier on, it's at this point, it's an educated guess, and we'll have to track it.
Okay, but those revenues are included in the overall revenue
Yes.
table you have here, right? Okay.
Yes.
All right. I mean, it's not a whole lot of money, but it's still
$300,000.
300,000. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so what this slide aims to provide is a snapshot of our general fund reserve over time. You'll see in 15-16, at the close of that budget year, we had about 3.7 million on the books as unrestricted general fund reserve. And over time, as was referenced in the prior slide, we used those general fund reserve dollars for various programming and improvements that were identified priorities of the council. So in 17-18, we found ourselves at about 671,000. At the close of 19-20, we expect to be somewhere at $565,306. I do want to note that where we stand with Teamsters on the Flores versus San Gabriel topic of cash in lieu of payments, it does not appear that the timing's going to align for a court decision that will authorize us to make those payments before June 30. So while we have 565,306 estimated in reserve as of the this weekend, May 31st, we still have outstanding payments that need to be made to all of our Teamsters members once that settlement is approved by the courts.
And what's the estimate on that?
It's just shy. It's both the back wages, penalties, and legal fees are estimated at about 100,000. And Shirley, I know you have your spreadsheet of actual values. I don't know if you or Tyler have the exact figure in front of you.
95,000 is what the agreement's just over 95,000 that we'll have to pay out once the courts approve the agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. What does that leave us with?
100,000 less, more or less.
100,000 less from the 565. Is that not correct?
Well, that is not all out of the general fund. Teamsters, a good portion of the payouts to the employees are in the other enterprise funds. So basically, it's the parks and rec guys that'll come out of there.
So does that mean we will have a reserve of say 500,000?
Right now, as of May 31st, we were tracking, I want to say, approximately $350,000 in the deficit for the year. But remember that, well, not remember it, I should state it. It does not include any transfer yet from the highway relinquishment fund that would offset that, because we're going to do that at the end of the year to see where we ended up at. So basically, it'd be pretty close to a push there, possibly.
Okay.
By the time we end of June with our in other words, pretty close to what we were supposed to be using for highway relinquishment.
Okay.
To be the deficit.
So what does that mean? What's your estimate that we would have as a reserve at the end of June?
About $560,000 to $570,000, depending on how June tracks out for final expenses.
And that's with withholding the Teamsters.
Yes,
for payment.
and the transfer over from highway.
Okay, the transfer over from highway. Okay, all right.
So that's pretty close then, that 565 is pretty close to what we'll end up with in reserves.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
And we won't be using those reserves to balance this last year's budget as it ends, right? At least as far as we know, there's some expenditures. We may take some money out of that too, but as far as we know,
the goal is to have a balanced budget. Of course, if for whatever reason the net operating loss for the general fund was over the 458, we would have to come back to council. And
correct. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You might also note that we're experiencing COVID-19 related expenses that also were not estimated.
Yeah.
As a
So
part
this
of
will
the
come out of that. Probably we'll have to spend some money out of that, but I don't think it'll be the whole 500,000. But I guess it's possible.
No.
Okay. And then, but in the next slide, then you show. We'll wait. I guess you're showing the 201,411 still remains as a shortfall in the budget. So I'm assuming with nothing else done, we would have to pull that from that reserve in the future or from some revenue source.
So, Councilmember Ketchman, you are correct. This is the actual punchline. After proposing all of the cuts that really impact what the city's program offerings are, July 1 through December 31, 2020, recognizing how tough those service level reductions are and the pressure that will likely come from turning them off. And then if COVID and CDC and health department come back saying all these activities can resume, but they're not funded, we're going to have a different set of pressures in play. In spite of all those changes that we're, trying to close this gap, we still have 221,000 more in potential cuts to accomplish in order to adopt a balanced budget. And so, as you suggest, the council may wish to look at the use of the reserve for this purpose. I think there is some hope on staff's part that the council might consider keeping that reserve in play for what next challenges we might face. And while the service delivery cuts are really hard for the community to experience, our financial solvency is still something critically important for the long haul.
I can give an update on the highway relinquishment, what is in there currently?
That's a good idea.
Currently, we're at $7.2 million before we transfer anything over to the general fund for this fiscal year, and pending about I think it's $570,000 to $600,000 reimbursement to the highway fund from the county for some reimbursements they owe us on. I think it was the 8th Street rehab. So we're pending that money from the county. So that's where we're at today.
Okay.
Pardon me?
How much was that you were expecting from the county?
Guillermo, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's somewhere around $570,000, give or take.
And that will go back into the general fund?
No, that would go into the highway relinquishment fund because that was for a project.
Oh, okay.
As a reminder, we're going to take that county right away back. It'll be relinquished to us. We performed the improvements to it as a change order to our own improvement project, and the county agreed to reimburse us for it.
Just a question for Tyler. Is the 7.2 million does not include that if we get that reimbursed? Does that reflect the interest rate taken out and the repair on 8th, and we still have that amount left?
The 7.2 is to date as of the end of May, but we have not taken any money from the from the highway relinquishment to the general fund yet. So that's still pending.
Okay, so that has not come out of this money, but the 8th Street repair already did come out of this money.
Yes.
That
correct.
portion
Yes, okay.
that was the city right away.
Right, that we did we took out money, I thought, $1 million. It was, I forget what that was, but it was a
Yeah,
big-
it was over $1 million.
Okay.
It's for, so remember, there's a portion that is city right of way that we received as a
Mhm.
relinquishment from the state, and there is county right of way that they wish to relinquish to us. And the
Okay,
terms of that
yes.
relinquishment was their improvement. And since we had an open contract, we did it as a change order to our open contract.
Correct. I remember. But this is
What
the money
about-
that would, okay.
What about the interest in the fund? Did we use all of that interest already, or is there interest in that fund that we could possibly?
The interest is always added as we go through the year. Last year it was earned about 133,000. This year, this budget year, I've reduced that to, I estimated maybe 100,000 because as you are well aware, interest rates are real low.
Yes.
And anticipated to stay low, so the interest won't be as high for the next year or two.
So you've included that amount in
Yes.
this table? Okay. Okay.
The portion that's going to be transferred over to the general fund, is that the interest amount that we talked about using
Last year
to balance this past year's budget? Is that's what you're referring to when you say the transfer?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is part
And
of the
that's gonna-
7.2 that's in there.
So that will reduce it by 475 or what was it? Something like that.
458.
Okay.
And should be increased by the county payment of about 570.
Be about a wash, just a little.
Pretty
little
close.
over a wash. Okay.
Pretty close, yeah. Plus any interest earned once posted through the end of the year would increase that one as well.
Okay.
So this is the last slide as it relates to specific big picture items. The next slides take into account a request from the council that had to do with what does it cost to run certain programs in our city offerings. And so we've got 3 additional slides before a potential break.
Rosanna, can I interrupt you for a bit? Donnie was wondering if we might be able to take a lunch break for a work call. I don't know how much longer our meeting will go, so what, is there interest in taking a break for lunch and then resuming?
Yeah, I'd like my burrito delivered, please. Just,
I think it might be a good idea, but I'm not, yeah, because we may go another, hour? Do you want to take a lunch break? Let's take a lunch break at 12 o'clock, or do you guys, Donnie, are you still there? He might have left.
Yes, I am. Not to be disruptive, I can certainly rejoin as soon as, just with the dynamic kind of fluid situation and moving things around, I don't want to be
I say we take a break.
disruptive, but yeah. So
Yeah,
I say we do too.
Do we want to go ahead and break now? Would that be okay, Rosanna? And then we can resume.
We're here and ready whenever you are.
Okay, all right.
I think we can leave, do we leave the recording going, Rosanna, and then just stop video and mute?
Armando suggests no.
Hang up?
That we
Hang up?
Yes.
Okay. All
Okay,
right.
so what time, what time do we want to get back on the call so that everybody's on point?
Would
I'm
1
okay
o'clock?
with 1 or 12:45 if it suits Donnie, whatever. Donnie's probably gonna be longer than 30 minutes, isn't he?
How about 1 o'clock?
1 o'clock would be.
1 o'clock.
Okay. Okay, we'll dial back in at 1.
Okay.
Question, do we use the same Zoom login that was put out?
Yes.
That would
Okay.
be best.
Okay, we'll see you guys at 1.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
We are ready whenever you are.
We're ready.
Okay, reconvene.
So
We were on page 7, I think.
yes, we left off on a discussion that had to do with the current shortfall. in the general fund, which left us with a gap of $221,411. So the worksheets that have been prepared and that are in the workshop materials, all the assumptions that have been discussed prior to this point in the presentation are assumed in those estimates for revenues and expenditures. And in spite of the multiple changes that are proposed, we did arrive at a gap that remains at just over $220,000. When we last touched bases with the council at strategic planning, the council expressed interest in better understanding if certain program elements were going to be taken out of the calendar. There was a desire to understand what those dollar values were. There's a number of benefits to that. Number one, it shows us which of our activities, what they bring in as income and what they generally produce as expenditures. So what we've got in slides 13 and 14, if you can, do you want me to control from this location? I'm sorry. I'm going to share screen from here. I'm sorry, one moment. Hopefully council can see. Let's see. What these values represent. So these are typically the programs that would be offered in the first 6 months and first half of the fiscal year. And these are items that we are proposing to not offer in light of fiscal constraints and COVID-19. So the first is a reference to public swim. This is the open hours and use of the pool. This is kind of I guess what you would call a loss leader. It's a way we put our pool into use and obviously accessible to the public. But what we charge for entry is really a very, very nominal amount relative to what it costs to run the pool during that window of time. So that results in a loss of about $36,000. We generate just under 1,000 and typically bring in about 1,600 or so users. We also host for a period of the summer pool rentals, and those private parties we do charge for lifeguard time and require insurance, and you'll see we generate just shy of $3,000 with expenditures that are that hover around 14,000. We also have a long-standing summer camp program that typically has about 250 participants. We run that program at about a loss of $32,000. And we also provide a youth soccer league that's grown to 300 in recent years. And we run that effort at about a $10,500 loss. Typically part of the summer, we also offer open gym. This is a format that's also available during typical periods of time where school is out, but open gym is needed for parents who work. We run that at a loss of about $7,200. Youth basketball starts up in the first half of a fiscal year, concludes in the second half. It is also a very, very widely subscribed program. We operate that program at a $6,300 loss. We do provide swim lessons one-on-one. That's really seen as a great benefit to the community, and that it promotes safety principles. We operate that program at about a $5,500 loss. And you'll also see 2 other programs that we offer in the first half of the year. Those are Aqua Zumba, where we bring in a limited amount of income based on about 360 participants, And we run that program at a loss of about $5,000. And the Junior Leader program operated at about a loss of $4,400.
Roughly, that's about 125,000.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna struggle. There we go.
There you go.
We also have a number of other offerings that are described as mini camp with about 60 participants. Pay, read, and play, which is at a loss of about $2,800 with a smaller group of 20 participants. We offer open gym in the winter. This is the weeks of Christmas vacation. That runs at a loss of about $2,200. We provide limited adult swim lessons, run that at a loss of under $1,000, and we also do some activities with parents and toddlers that run at a minimal loss as well. So our total value, when you put all of these together as a dollar amount, we're at about $128,000. So the intention in providing those to you is, obviously we offer a wide array of services in the first half of any fiscal year. They are intended to achieve many different goals for the city. It's to make programming accessible to all families, for our facilities to be convening places for all kids of all backgrounds to interface. There's obviously a lot of history to how these programs were structured and what the goals and objectives were in developing fee structures. One of the items of note that council is certainly very familiar with is in our last budget cycle for this fiscal year, we tried to take on the topic of greater or increased cost recovery. Maybe not 100%, but something that approaches it and brings the fee structure into a more current format. And we wholly recognize as staff that this is sometimes very hard for the community to accept because things have been held as a constant for so many years. So, what was contained in this first half of the presentation was a desire to do kind of a deep dive into the general fund, what our estimated revenues are for next year in light of COVID and other issues on the horizon, and then, what our expenditures are for the things we can predict, what our employer costs are. Over 80% of our budget is devoted to employee compensation. So we've got a very good handle on those dimensions. But for the things that we don't control, all we can do is contingency plan. So our intention today is to get some feedback from the council to find out if we are, I know these aren't necessarily welcome changes, but we're looking for some of your thoughts on whether we're on course, if you want to see changes between now and the final budget presentation, what direction might you offer to staff at this point for next steps?
This is George. If I could make a comment, please.
Yes.
And so with respect to what you're sharing, Roseanne, I think it's on course. I mean, I realize that we're in a tough situation financially, fiscally here for the city. And I mean, it's not something that we take lightly, but I think that you're on course. That's my opinion. I mean, this is, really the direction we've been providing along the way. So those are my initial comments. I'll have more later, but that's my initial thought.
Yeah, Rosanna, if I could, this is Donnie and Tyler. First off, thank you for this. Really, even the format made it really easy to see where some of the savings can be realized. And I am fully aware as council is these savings are also cuts, as we've been discussing, as George just mentioned. So I think the overall approach, as painful as it is, realizes some savings, but on the deep dive side of it, I want to kind of get into a little bit of the, I think it's going to be really important, and it's not just a personal opinion. I think council has echoed this together. That's there's still unknowns, and I know with Tyler's best estimates, we're trying to predict what the potential impacts of something like what we're going through. And I think we're not the only city. I would assume every jurisdiction, every city across the country, and really for that matter, the world, we're all facing the same thing. So I think with that said, I think our approach is to be as mindful of that as possible. And I think we're making some difficult, what's proposed here is difficult, but I would go as far as saying, and I think we've said this before, this is the time for us to be bold enough to where we're going to have to do things that we normally would not do. And up to and including, I know there's been some discussion of maybe relinquishment fund. I think there's other funds, albeit we're about to dive into the enterprise fund side of things. But I think we need to pull out all the stops to protect the city's well-being for the near-term future, which may be the next couple of years. I think the decision we're making today or through this budget is going to be very important. So with that, what I would offer up is if in the deeper dive or analysis, there may be some other things we have to consider. And so I'm in agreement with what's been presented. But I think what I'm also hearing maybe in this deeper dive, I don't know if it's another discussion or if we can discuss it today, it's maybe offering up also is there another tier, another layer that we need to look at as council and as a city that's really going to kind of position us to where we can continue to weather the storm. I guess that's what I'm getting at. And so I think your table broke that down, primary versus maybe some of the things that we're cutting right now, but maybe even a deeper dive if we have to on the primary side. Are there further cuts that we need to look at? And I always want to make sure that we buffer this, you guys, with, we're looking at this as a one-year budget. And for that matter, we do a mid-year review. So much like corporate America, they even look at things quarterly. I mean, so, we step forward with a bold plan that we think will get us through the storm. But, review quarterly or, maybe not wait for the mid-year budget and see what the impacts are. If there's some of these services that could be returned and it's affordable, for us, I think we'd be the first to want to do that. So anyways, I don't know. I know I'm speaking in generalities, but what I'm honing in on is, as far as staff is concerned, is there another level here we need to be discussing? Is there a concern of the unknown that I think council could, consider through this budget process?
I want to be sure and invite Tyler to comment in this area, should he wish to. One of the topics that we have been struggling with internally is how we can get to a place where we're living within the recurring revenue horizon. And obviously when what we can count on is in question, which is where we are, we're in a very difficult circumstance. But if we don't come up with a strategy that can even modestly orient towards the rainy day fund rebuild, there's some much bigger issues that we're going to be grappling with as an agency. So Tyler, if you would like to weigh in further, you're certainly welcome.
Well, I echo city manager's points there, and to Councilmember Wharton's point, I was going to even suggest that the end of October or November, let's take a look it's at the budget and better feel of the revenues at that time. I'll have the sales tax, there's information, and see how it's trending. I think it's very important to look at it more frequently, especially this year, if not all the time. A lot of things that other cuts that I've discussed with the city manager that are painful, and a lot of them are MOU related, where you just can't unilaterally do something, as far as I understand, without, you know, to try to, in the short term, trying to shore up the budget. So there are a couple items like that, but or not, I agree with the city manager. It's important to try to, even if it's not this year, maybe set some in the future reserve type funding set aside, something of that nature. In the short term this year, it might not be possible, but if there's a plan, that would be nice.
Yeah, and Tyler, if I could just follow up comment is, I think for us, we're in a time where there's nothing about this that's about, you know, making popular decisions or any of that. I think these are, you know, they're always going to be not just uncomfortable, but very necessary. So I think it's important for us to echo to staff that not only is this approach, you know, as tough as it is, important, I think, like you said, revisiting, and we really need to do what we need to do to make sure that we keep, I think, keeping our city, at, you know, at water level, or, you know, above water is, you know, even that, you know, those things are going to be a challenge, but I think we can do it. I think there's a plan here, but we need to revisit, whether it's 6 months, 4 months, you know, quarterly, you know, however we look at it. And I feel pretty confident that if we work at this way, we'll be able to exercise alternatives versus reacting, perhaps to something that we might not be able to dig out of, you know, that type of thing. So, I mean, I think all the signs are there, so we'll press forward. I don't know if that helps, but these are great specifics, and I think if there's anything else, as you know, we move forward with general fund, we should be ready to discuss it and do what we need to do.
This is Sam. I kind of echo what my fellow council members have said. The only thing that I would say, though, is that I think we're looking at two different things. One, we have a COVID impact where we're unable to deliver certain services due to the COVID. And then we had the financial impact where we're maybe in the future able to deliver services, but we don't have the funding to do that. And so I think we have to look at this from two different perspectives. And what I'd like to see us do is, in the next few months, probably towards the fall timeframe, is revisit some of this. I noticed some of the cuts that we make, you know, we have some small programs there that serve like 10 and 20 people. I'm not sure that that's a cost-effective thing for us to do. We have some larger programs that serve 300. If we raise the prices on some of those to come to a more equitable situation, we might lose half of those people, but at least we would continue service to 150. So I'd like to I think for right now, we have to do what we have to do. But I think as we revisit, I think we have to look at those factors and see if there's something we can do as we return to what they consider our new normal out there. As the COVID kind of wanes, or which I think it will with time, we'll have a vaccine, we'll have things that go on. I think we have to take a look at each one of those items there. You know, if we don't have the library open due to COVID, then I think we have to take a look at the staffing, because you have a library that's not open, you can't keep the staff. You have to try to do what's right for them, but you also have to do what's right for the public and the funding of that organization. So I noticed that they seem to be taking some cuts that are fairly large, and so I'm considerate of that. But I also think we need to make that as seamless as we can, and try to get that through and make it okay for the employees, at least as much as it can be, and okay for the public also. So I think we're going to have to revisit that, because I don't think we can have libraries and not open them at least some of the time. So that's what I mean by revisiting some of this stuff and looking at how we make those changes. I do think it's important that we cut the funding a little bit on everything as much as possible and still maintain a level of service that the public expects. I don't think we're going to be doing what we've done in the past, but I think COVID's kind of prepared us for what it might look like for the future. And so I think we have to look into that. But I think a revisitation every quarter is not a bad idea, just to take a look, even if we don't make any changes.
But could I suggest every 4 months, just because some of the analysis we do, for example, sales tax is one of the bigger drivers with our consultants. It's usually the quarter ends and we have a meeting and discussion, and say I have one set up in August for the June 30th. So if we could do it, unless council prefers it more frequent, but like at the 4-month mark, like say November, for the first quarter, that would be pretty good. We'll have the audit near completion by then, and we can see, confirm where our numbers are for the end of June 30. That would be what I would suggest.
I'm fine with that. 4 month is fine if that makes more sense.
I agree with the projections that you guys have presented. I did have some concerns about the staffing cuts, but I understand that if we don't have the library open, there's not very much that we can do. And with the pandemic right now, I don't see us reopening the library anytime within before the end of the year. I mean, I'm not sure, but it doesn't look, and I also feel that our community understands where we're at. And so if they see that none of those are open at this time, it kind of gives us an opportunity to possibly get back into a position where the state and our public health say it's time to open, then we'll be in a better position to go ahead and open when everybody else does, and be able to bring back those services and the staffing.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are so many unknowns right now that a quarterly, or as Tyler's suggesting in November, update's going to be helpful. But the sort of the elephant in the room is that we have an excuse for a bit of a respite this year because of COVID, but ultimately we're underwater with a lot of these programs anyway each year. We were in difficult times before COVID hit financially, and that's going to be no different as we get through this, get through the lockdown and start getting some sales tax revenue coming back in. That's not going to be our magic bullet by any means. It's going to be, a cumulative effect. I'm hoping that between, savings that will be realized after a new finance software is integrated, hopefully that'll be a small cut that will help. And, looking at changes to service levels is probably going to be something that's going to have to be long-term. We filled the gap in the last 6 months of this past fiscal year by making those very severe cuts, and we're looking at that going forward through the rest of this at least this calendar year. But we've got some hard decisions in front of us as to whether we where we pull money from, or what services we continue to cut past this cycle. It's a difficult set of circumstances that we're facing. So I don't think we can, optimistically say that we'll reintroduce some of these programs or some of these services unless we have a serious change in revenues. As the past couple of years have shown us, we just have this, these railroad tracks of expenditures and revenues that just they're not kind to us. They're not lining up, and we're not able to break even. So we're going to have to continue to make difficult decisions. But my hope is that, as we streamline some things, that it'll free up money in other areas. But it's, at least this year we have a bit of a respite because of COVID, and people will be understanding, I think, of what we have to do to get through at least this calendar year.
If I may offer a ray of hope, Before COVID, and I think I've mentioned it before, I mean, our revenues, we were gonna exceed. I mean, sales tax alone had come up, and it could have been as close to 250, 300,000 more than what was budgeted by the time of the June 30th. So if things, the sooner they get back to normal, as Councilman Nava had said before, you know, there would be some additional revenue that maybe we're not seeing now. Well, not enough to offset the continued rising cost of all these what I call fixed costs, pension and insurance and what have you. But it's just not all bad.
Yeah, and along those lines, hopefully, you know, hopefully there will be some kind of relief coming from the state or federal government that, you know, we may not be anticipating just yet, but who knows?
Yeah, maybe with that money, we could look at bringing back some of the staff that we're having to, you know, that we had to lay off. I was just gonna ask one question, Rosanna, in regards to on the page, I guess it's page 4 on the closing the gap. I did have a concern about the not having any janitorial staffing for administration and maintenance for PD. I'm just wondering if there's any way that we could bring back, I wouldn't think that would cost us a whole lot of money to, I'll just give you an example of what I saw one day, and it really bothered me. I mean, I know you're in there too, you're in administration in the building, and the girls are having a hard time with having to do the emptying of the trash and so forth. And I just feel like that's a little bit too much to ask for, like other duties as assigned. I know that that's kind of a catch-all, and I know because of that pandemic, we're asking people to do more than we normally would. But also for health and safety, I would prefer that someone other than the staff there, including yourself, would be required to do that. If we could look at that one item. I don't know how you feel about that. I mean, I can go into the actual detail of what I saw, but I just felt very concerned for the staff.
So just to be clear, what is typically housed in the admin office is a part-time janitor at minimum wage. That individual is split with the PD. When that individual was shared with the PD, the performance of outdoor maintenance occurred. So what's taken place since that position was eliminated was the duties for bathroom cleanup and admin office cleanup were absorbed by existing staff. The police department continues to receive janitorial services that are 5 days a week. So there's no cleaning that's occurring at PD. What was performed as outdoor maintenance duties is now being performed by our maintenance personnel in the Parks and Rec department. So it got added to their list of responsibilities. The janitorial elimination from admin was purely a function of money. I mean, it was a budget reduction. So that is the reason. It wasn't convenient.
How much are we talking though? I mean, realistically,
so, I would say half of the individual's time. What is our normal at this point, Tyler? 31,000 all in.
Sorry. Yeah, that's close. So remember, minimum wage will increase in January, so 31 is pretty close.
So half of that or twice that?
It was half of that, and then split half at PD and half at the admin office. And we were trying to preserve our resources for COVID emergencies. So
you're talking 15 and then divide that in half.
Correct.
Yeah, I just feel that that's something that we should consider for the safe and health of the staff that are there in the administration office, which includes you know, the limited staffing that's there in the administration building.
it's not a straight across the board. I mean, it's not an $8,000 increase, you know, for janitorial service in the administrative office. It would be more than that, because it's not like we can just bring someone in.
Yeah.
No, 8 is the cost of the salary, so we need to increase the budget in this building by that amount.
Yeah, but it would be probably more than 8,000 just to bring someone in specially to do janitorial service.
Right. No. The reason we have always gone on the path of a direct hire is because we can't afford adding it to our janitorial services contract.
Right.
It's far more costly.
Right.
It is almost twice as much in our last bidding effort. That's why it was listed as an additive, but eliminated because it was further weight on the general fund that it couldn't absorb.
Yeah. My point is, though, if you were to just hire someone just to do janitorial service in the administrative offices as he was doing before, it's probably going to cost more than what our half of the half was costing.
Yes.
For someone who was already on salary.
That's probably true.
The person wasn't on salary, it was an hourly.
Oh, okay.
Hourly payment. Yeah. Got it.
We can look at it as the budget is prepared. It increases the gap of 210,000, and just one other item of note. The ERP, the software upgrade that was referenced a little bit earlier, that is estimated at another 70 to 100,000 next year if implemented. So we would take our 210 and add another 70 to 100 to assume that project, and then an additional sum to address bringing janitorial services online.
I thought we kind of, did we talk about using the relinquishment money for that software program?
We are certainly open to receiving your input and feedback.
Well, just based on the presentation, and I think we all realize how important it is for us to implement purchase a software program that will make doing all this work so much easier and not as time consuming, and in the end it would save money. I would be in favor of taking money from there to purchase the software program.
So year one is 70 to 100 total costs for a 3-year rollout. Tyler, would you like to recap total costs and then the ongoing maintenance?
Yeah, the ongoing is about, I want to say rough figures about, I can't recall offhand, sorry, $90,000 around there annually for everything. What is in the budget is the hardware for IT department for the file server. That is included in the 221 already, so that is in the budget, but the ERP implementation and that side of it is not. So we would be, which is upgrading the hardware as is right now, which is needs to be done. That is in the budget.
So whether we move forward with the finance solution or not, we do have an addition, and that is assumed in the estimates currently of approximately $40,000. That is programmed. What is not is an addition of 70 to 100,000 in year one that would theoretically increase the gap to 310. So if council is if it's the consensus of the body to move forward with the software upgrade using relinquishment funds for the initial or total rollout, and then maintenance would be assumed by the general fund in future years or something, maybe that's a way to frame it if that's where the council is.
I guess my question is, do we have to use that right away, or is there some other, we talked a little bit about reserves, what we should have, what we shouldn't have. If that's available, we probably wouldn't use relinquishment funds, so we would only use the relinquishment funds if needed. Is that what we're talking about?
Is it the council's wish to zero the reserve?
No, I don't think it's our wish to zero the reserve, but if we pull 100,000, depending upon what the reserve is, and you got to look at that final figure, and we don't know what that's going to be. But say you used 100,000 from the reserve, you could replace the reserve with the relinquishment money, put it into the reserve, as opposed to bringing it over and using it to expend. And then you could maybe return that in future times if the money ever becomes any kind of, you could return that to the relinquishment funds. In other words, what I'm saying is, rather than tell people that we're taking it from the relinquishment funds, if it's possible to take it from the reserve in some way, you're saying you're using your reserve. You could replace that reserve with relinquishment funds if necessary, or if not necessary, you wouldn't have to do that. So I don't know that we wanted to say right now, well, we're just going to use relinquishment funds. We're going to use whatever funds we need to use in order to get that accomplished. And I think that's up to you to set aside in some ways where that money comes from, and then you come back and ask us, is this what you want to do? And then that's what we do. That's kind of the way I kind of look at it.
If I could interject, whether it's relinquishment funds or reserve, it doesn't, I mean, it's just money, right? And so
Yes.
if we're
Just
using it,
move from account
but I
to
would
the
just say this, if we're going to be using any funds, it's highly unlikely that anytime in the near future that money's going to be replaced. I mean, it's just a lot of money that we're going to be taking from it to offset a gap. And it's likely going to be 18, 24 months before things stabilize with, you know, sales tax and other things that are coming to the city of Brawley. And so it's going to be a long while. So whatever we do, we just need to consider the fact that whatever we're going to use, it's likely not going to be replaced. Not anytime soon, at least.
And I understand that. I'm not saying, I'm just saying, so sometimes to the public, where a funding source comes from makes a bigger difference than if it comes from one source or another source. I understand that it's all part of the general fund. I mean, even the relinquishment money to some extent is a part of the general fund because it can be utilized for that purpose, not that we may want to. So what I'm saying is, do we want to just say, hey, we're pulling this from the relinquishment fund today, or do we want to wait and see where that's actually coming from? I mean, it's all one and the same funds to us, but maybe to the public it isn't. And so that's just my thought. I mean, I don't mind either way. I'm willing to do whatever the council wants to do in that. And in fact, you know, I believe that there's some things we could do, but that's all that's.
I have a question about that. Is the cost of the software and then the ongoing annual cost, is that fully borne by the general fund, or is that split up at all between other departments?
The 70 to 100 would be the general fund for this year. The 90 that I spoke to, only that is total for all funds. So part of that would be general fund of the 90. I think roughly when I ran the figures over the weekend to see what would be general fund allocated, Rosanna, I sent you that in an email, but I don't have it in front of me.
I have
it. It's what percentage? Yeah.
Let's see. General fund at 70 to 100 first year costs.
Yeah, I didn't put a percentage on it. That is percentage. It's about less than 50%.
You said, okay, but you stated that the general fund portion was 70
yes,
to 100.
Yeah, so but so the 90 that I referred to on the ongoing, it'd be about the same percentage for the general fund, which would be about half of that, give or take.
So we can expect 45 to 50 being pulled from the general fund each year for the ongoing costs of that software. However, we can also expect at some point after the learning curve is absorbed and all that, we can expect with the streamlining in staff time and all that for billing, for the costs for us to get some kind of a return on those costs. And I wonder if there's a way, or if it's going to complicate things, or if this is already built into the system to see what the savings is in comparison to previous years on just the cost of doing the billing and, you know, all the data input and all that kind of stuff.
I think you'll see it in two areas, and one of them for sure is hard to quantify, is in the efficiencies.
Right.
So you'll get, in theory, and I believe in actuality, you're going to get more work done during the day through all the departments.
Sure.
And then the other savings that monetarily you'll see is the clocking of payroll and labor where there's an actual clock in and out, which I think, in my opinion, would produce some year-over-year savings.
Yeah.
Tyler, you also said the other day that we needed something like that in place because we're still having to figure out the overtime rates that are not being configured as a result of that Flores versus San Gabriel. So you're still having to do a lot of manual calculations, which down the road a piece may still get us into trouble.
Yes, everything, a lot of everything we do is pretty manual. If I just may offer an example, you see the workbook that you have in front of you, that's just the general fund. Every line item,
I know,
the budget is manually entered in an amount of whatever with the budget we decide to put in there. So, I mean, that's just.
I think that you did a presentation regarding this subject at it was the last meeting or a few meetings back, but I was sold on the idea of that this is a good investment for us to make. And I think putting it off is not really going to help us in the long run. I think we need to take action on this item. My opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. It needs to be done, and it's going to take a few years to completely get up to speed on it. And I'll feel good if at the end of my first term, if people are happy with that system and it's fully integrated. Honestly, that's a huge change for the finance department, for the city.
And just based on the questions or the discussion regarding whether we take the money from the reserve or we take the money from the relinquishment, I think the last figure that we got, Tyler, you can correct me, was the reserve looked like it would be somewhere around 560,000.
Yes, that is correct. At the end of this year.
Okay. All right.
Do you know if there's maybe you can't answer this, but is there a cutoff or an amount in the reserves that will trigger a change in our JPIA rating that would cause certain costs to go up?
I do not know the answer without researching that as far as the insurance, being that we are, I think your point is we're being self-insured, and if reserves reach a certain point, that might increase our expenses. We can definitely find that, answer that question, but I don't have that off.
Okay. I guess I'm kind of with Sam in that if we won't hit that, if there is a dollar amount that triggers that, a negative change in our rating, I'd like to not hit that. But if we can pull off the expenses for the at least for the new software program, if not to close the gap completely, without triggering that, then that's what I'd rather do, is pull that from the reserve first, and then if we need to backfill some from the relinquishment fund to do it that way. I realize it, in the end, it's all the same dollars, but it may look better to do it that way.
Perhaps it would be most prudent with reference to kind of how auditors view it, that we revisit the city's general fund reserve preservation policy and modify the set-aside amounts. Because what's happening is that we're showing on the record that we are inconsistent with our own policy.
Mm-hmm.
And that is an issue that has arisen in the auditor's review of our documents.
And I think we should change our policy. I think we've already effectively done that by our actions already anyway.
Yeah, I think the policy stated 15%, and there's no way that we're going to do that.
There's no way we can meet that now.
And we didn't have the policy in place previously, so it's
Right.
not, we can change that. That's something that was designed by council.
Absolutely.
Yep. Agreed.
Okay, so I think we have some great input from council on how we approach what remains a preparation for the general fund, and what we are prepared to do should the council have the willingness to review some additional slides. We have a recap We've got about a dozen funds that the city operates outside of the general fund that are for very highly specified purposes. And what we want to convey to the council is no major changes are proposed on the employee side of staffing these various activities throughout the city. But our engine, which is inside of the Public Works Department, is firing up for capital projects that are laid out in terms of each of these funds. So this is the time that we would typically review capital projects and just reacquaint council with the prioritization process that's in play for large scale projects. Try to go to that screen if I can.
So before we move on, just a question on the discussion that we just had. Did you need some a motion direction or something for that, or?
What I have heard is consensus of the council around no further cuts than those proposed. So we're on course with the assumptions as is, and the 210 plus any additional would be bridged with either reserve or one-time relinquishment funds. We don't need a motion if that is if I haven't accurately represented the consensus of the body, we're certainly here to take additional direction.
Okay.
I think that's what we're saying.
I think that's it.
Okay. So, Madam Mayor, are you ready? Would you like me to bring forward the remaining slides?
Yes, let's go ahead and move forward. Yes, thank you.
No, there it is.
Okay. So as presented, in total, our projects represent approximately $12 million in capital projects that were scaled to be achieved within the next 12 months. So in prior years, we've been devoted to creating a list, no matter how long, of capital projects. This year, we've taken a little bit of a different approach in that we're framing the priorities in terms of what can reasonably be achieved within the time that's available.
Okay.
So the first round of capital projects are all going to be very, very familiar to you. As you may recall, the Allen Street Waterline and Roadway Improvement Project was temporarily suspended and will soon resume. This is a largely unscheduled set of improvements in that we experienced some chronic emergencies along this line, and instead of repeatedly performing emergency repairs on a very, very aged infrastructure, we opted to actually resolve the problem in a more permanent way. So that project will resume this month and will likely continue on into the next fiscal year with final payments. Legion Road Phase 2, we had our bid opening yesterday, and we look forward to bringing that particular item for action and award at the next City Council meeting. Legion Street Phase 3 will follow, and we're hopeful about that being aggressively implemented following Phase 2. In the remainder of this year, we will take on SB1 funded projects, which will be linked together in one project. It'll be 2nd Street from Malin to Kay. This is on the side of the east side of Witter School. and 8th Street from Rio Vista to Las Flores, which we're looking forward to doing repairs as a stretch that we quite often do repair work. And then the last item is moving forward with design at K Street, the full length from Highway 86 to 8th Street. We have design this year and construction the following year with a grant that we successfully obtained. Additional roadway improvement projects. This is imagining Highway 86, but to the east. So between, I guess at the rear or entrance to the Latigo Ranch and Gateway specific plan area on the south side. So the city was successful in securing grants for Legion for design. Legion from Highway 86 to Western Avenue, which is at the rear of the retention basin that borders Walmart. And then we've got a grant for Western Avenue, which runs north-south from Legion to Wildcat. Those two activities are planned for design, and then we'll move into construction next fiscal year. We also have a carryover project that we're trying to get to, but as you can see, focused on larger scale projects. We've got 50,000 set aside for certain ADA improvements in the downtown area.
Okay.
Sorry, let me see if I'm having a problem sharing, advancing my slide.
Slide 21, right.
Armando, could I possibly get your help with, I don't know why it's frozen on my, I lost, let's see. Okay, it says it's, the screen sharing is paused. I apologize.
It is okay. We have it in writing.
Yeah, we have it in writing, Rosanna, so we can move forward.
Okay.
Just go ahead. Maybe he can fix it, but let's move forward.
Try to take it off of this. Okay. And following on slide 21, you'll see a reference to one very large project, which is the decorative lighting project in the downtown, as well as two smaller projects, one being a replacement of a significant piece of equipment, and as well as pedestrian improvements on the plaza between North and South Plaza. And then we move on to some larger scale projects that we're using impact fees for. This is in slide 22. That includes the Wildcat Drive from Western to First Street. This was the project that went out to bid once already. We rejected bids. We're in the midst of a small redesign that will take into account the improvements that are tied to Western Avenue, where it connects to Wildcat. That project is programmed, as well as the IID Best Canal undergrounding, also very familiar to all of you. In addition to facilities relocation that's required for Wildcat to go in at about $76,000, and certain other related IID expenditures that are not eligible per their assistance. So you'll see how we're utilizing those impact fees, and some of those are wholly grant funded, and some we are looking forward to receiving as reimbursement from the private developer. Onto the water fund. These are also very familiar in that we've been receiving updates to the council. We've got our sedimentation basins, which we're beginning to step up, and pump actuators. That's also listed. The raw water ponds liner replacement. This is our most significant project in the water fund for next year. You may have observed when you drive Cotton Rosser, the state of the pond lining that is exposed to the open air. This would actually replace that. And is a very, very large undertaking for our water plant, and deemed to be of highest priority. We also have additional features within the treatment plant, including the rehab of our finished water reservoir. We continue to see a reference to Western Avenue. Previously referenced are only the roadway improvements, but the water fund will cover the actual water line replacement work. And we'll also be doing some work alongside San Diego State that will best assure water quality at the end of that line that reaches the campus to the east of our city limits. If I know these are really large ticket items, Guillermo is available and on the line should you wish for a more detailed description. If not, I am prepared to move forward.
Move forward. I think we're good.
Okay. Slide 24 includes several items. One of them was just on our council agenda. It occurs twice a year. The UV bulbs and ballasts. The AC unit replacement has to do with our ACs that are out there and in the corrosive environment of in the vicinity of the wastewater treatment plant. We've got another unit that needs to be replaced in light of deterioration. So that is listed for replacement, and you have heard from Guillermo in prior presentations about the emergency power supply to the headworks that's necessary, and that's kind of a fail-safe if we have a system failure as it relates to power. It allows the plant to continue to operate without issues. And then we have coating of one of the clarifiers weir, which is a significant undertaking and improvement. On to slide 25, two brief slides remaining. Wastewater continues to have additional items. Many of these have actually been before the council in a number of different ways, so they are familiar. The Pioneers Memorial Healthcare District, in the area in front of PMH, that is where Willard and Legion intersect. We have some review of infrastructure in that area that we aim to perform. We also have approximately 8 deteriorated manholes that have been identified for replacement. Their physical locations are noted. We continue to work our way through improvements at our lift station, the sewer lift station, number 1. That is obviously a very large project at $435,000. We're seeking to acquire 2 more flow meters from a wastewater point of view. We're looking to address the area on Wildcat that borders where First Imperial Credit Union is, extending to the east. We have obligations tied to mitigation in that area to maintain the surface in that vicinity. So you'll see about a $30,000 maintenance project identified there. We also have a sewer line replacement project that borders the west side of the library, in between the library and finance, and some unusual connections in that area that have created some chronic problems. So we're hoping to take that on. We've got a storm drain issue at Cesar Chavez and Main. This is in between, let's see, the gas station at the corner, Chevron gas station, and a store to the east. And we've got a set of issues that we're hoping to resolve in the $82,000 realm. And we also have a purchase of a device that will help us at lift station number 2 to address grease. And then the last item listed on 26, all on its own because it is an airport project. The next project identified on our airport improvement capital project list is reconstruction of runway 826. The majority of this design fee comes from an FAA award of funds, and what remains is a local match of 10%, and that is identified for the upcoming fiscal year as well. And with that, we, staff and I are prepared to answer any questions or comments. I'm going to add Guillermo into the mix here and see if we can have him on the screen in case you have any further questions.
I just had a question on the Wildcat. Okay, that one you said it's going out to bid. Wildcat Drive from Western Avenue to First Street. When do you anticipate that will go out to bid again?
So that has a remaining design issue that's tied to the new grant that we had. Guillermo just last night sent over some documents to me in finance to execute that have to do with some, I believe it was AT&T relocation. And I also recall some work in August that was scheduled. So can you walk us through that, Guillermo?
Yes, I believe, I'm not sure if the mayor is referring to the street, phase 1, which is between Western and First Street, or the second section, which is from First to Dogwood. But what I understood is there is the first section, right? The first phase. That one, we have to complete some design items to be able to do to have a better street, and is in connection with the development to the north, which is Mainland Park Subdivision. So I would say that we can anticipate to have resolved in about a month and be able to re-advertise.
Okay, thank you.
But I think we'll see Allen Street, most visible will be Allen Street and Legion phase 2 before we see
Earlier.
Wildcat moving. Is that a correct interpretation, Guillermo?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Or
I got a question about slide 21, the decorative lighting, air compressor, flashing beacons. That decorative lighting project, that's the downtown lighting. That's already been designed, or is it still lacking some there?
It's at 95% design. We have some remaining issues to resolve that Jack Holt was assisting with. Guillermo, can you walk us through the remaining items on that front?
Yes, initially that project was to install the lights on the street, but some months ago, Jack Holt, in meetings with the staff, pretty much parks, they saw the convenience to integrate all the needs, the electrical needs along Main Street in the plaza area to those electrical circuits to be able to provide service to all the events and the decoration during Christmas time and some other parades. So it became a much larger project, but at the same time will resolve a lot of issues that currently are electrical wise, where they have to pull a lot of extension cords, which is not very safe, to do connections for those services. With this integration to the project, all these issues will be removed, and there will be very safe and nice infrastructure to serve the needs of these parades and these events. So that's the reason for the redesign that some months ago the council approved. I remember that probably was about $28,000 that to spend in additional design, but at the same time will save construction money because it was improved for the installation of these services plus the relocation of some of the conduits that were proposed underneath concrete. So now it will be by jack and bore, so there won't be inconveniences to the traffic with open trenches across Main Street.
Good, good.
That's good.
And will this, you think this will be executed within this next fiscal year, or will it take beyond that to actually install everything?
We are hoping that to have the design completed by within this month, let's say by the end of June, and we will need to probably another month to prepare the package and all the documents and be able to go out to bid. So it most likely will be advertised during the month of August.
Good. And then the air compressor, is that on a truck piece of equipment, or is that shop related?
Right. No, it is. It has tires, so it can be pulled with the pickup truck.
Oh, it's for jackhammers and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for jackhammer, pretty much. The only reason that is under the list is because the amount of money. In reality, it's a piece of equipment like many others, but due to the cost, we include it there for you to know.
And the flashing beacons, is that, you said North and South Plaza, so this is not on Main, this is on the
Yes, it is on Main Street, pretty much to warn people or vehicles approaching the crosswalk in front of the post office. But it will be in conjunction or like an accessory to the lighting project.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That is needed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from anyone?
No. Just thank you to the city manager, Tyler, and all the other department heads who put all this stuff together. And it seemed like it went easier this year than it has previously. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it just seems like it at this point, at least at this point in time.
Very happy to have Tyler on staff. He's made it a lot easier on the rest of us. And
Thank you, Tyler.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good job on that.
I apologize for changing up all the meeting this morning.
No, it's all good. It's all
Okay.
good. We appreciate
And
it.
I know the department heads had a big role in there too, all the department heads. So thank you all for your assistance with this. Very good.
All right. Worked pretty well. Yeah.
Thank you, Rosanna.
Thank you, Rosanna.
we have collected all your feedback today. Our current plan is to bring back at the next regularly scheduled meeting the final budget. If between now and then you have any other thoughts or concerns, and I know the council has expressed a potential openness to another conversation if a separate time is needed, either inside of this date and the next council meeting date, or creating a special meeting date in June to delay budget a little bit, to have one more conversation if that's needed. We're here to get the final work product in a format that council is comfortable with. So we're waiting for your direction.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's it then. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess that concludes our meeting. So unless there's anything else, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Everyone have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you all soon. Be safe. Okay.
Bye.